The story begins in the 7th biosphere, where the city of Liang is suddenly attacked. A sharp warning siren echoes throughout the entire city, causing people to panic and scramble to find shelter. Moments later, countless blazing meteors pour down from the sky, like a rain of fire carrying destruction. Yet amid the burning scenery, one strange object stands out: an azure blue crystal, completely untouched by flames. The blue crystal hurtles downward at incredible speed, as if it has a specific target within the chaos of the city. In the blink of an eye, it crashes directly into the body of a young man. The violent impact makes him spit out blood. Before he can even recover, the crystal slowly sinks into his heart, and a mysterious energy begins to pulse inside his body. The scene shifts to the present, where many students have gathered at the school's training ground. In front of them, a man delivers a speech, explaining that the students' only hope of becoming elite martial artists in the future is to enter the Hongji class. The instructor explains that the placement exam is modeled after the college entrance examination and consists of two parts: a written academic test and a martial arts assessment. The total score is 750 points, 225 points for academics and 525 points for the martial exam. He hopes everyone will apply what they have learned and answer carefully. He emphasizes forcefully, almost shouting, that only the top 10 students in the overall ranking will be able to enter the Hongxi class. After that, he announces that the academic exam is about to begin and orders everyone to enter the exam hall in an orderly manner. As Chen prepares himself, his mind is crystal clear: this is his chance to become a martial artist. He recalls his first year of high school, when he suddenly lost consciousness and fell into a coma. Out of concern for his health, his parents were forced to apply for 2 years of medical leave for him. Now, he knows that this is his final opportunity. He must seize it at all costs. While walking toward the exam hall, he is suddenly struck hard by another man. It turns out to be a group of bullies, and their leader, standing in the center, arrogantly asks whether Chen is really planning to take the exam. The man mockingly says that anyone can dream of entering the Hongji class, but Chen, who has been on leave for 2 years since his first year, still dares to participate in the examination. With a frightening smile and reddened eyes, the bully stretches out his hand as he speaks. He says that this kid truly has guts, getting sick, taking 2 years of leave, and now directly charging into the Hongji class exam. Does he really think he is some kind of genius? Before the bully can touch him, Chen immediately grabs the man's hand with his own palm, gripping it tightly with tremendous strength. Coldly, he says that he appreciates the concern, but the man should worry more about how he himself is going to pass his own exam. After that, Chen turns around and walks away without hesitation. One of the bullies comments that Chen was obviously bullied back in his first year, yet now he has become so arrogant. What if they teach him a lesson after the exam? Their leader stops them. In his mind, he has already noticed that the boy's grip strength is far from ordinary. He scolds his companions, asking if they have no brains at all. If they are caught now, they will definitely be disqualified. It would be better to wait for the martial exam later. With a sinister smile, he thinks that if he, accidentally, cripples Chen during the exam, no one would be able to complain. Chen is now seated at his desk. He looks at the question on the screen, which requires a short answer. Describe the current state of the world and the first day of the High Martial Calendar. This is common knowledge, so he immediately begins answering. He recalls that in the year 2842 of the Old Era, a civilization from another world was discovered and launched an invasion of Earth. Humanity retaliated with nuclear weapons, but after 2 years, they were completely defeated in the war. More than 5 billion lives were lost under global nuclear radiation. Amid the catastrophe, humans broke through the limits of their bodies and began to evolve. On August 27, in the year 2860 of the Old Era, the life intensity of all adults reached level 2. That day marked the end of the Old Era and the beginning of a new age, the first day of the High Martial Calendar. The second question concerns key figures who made major contributions during the First War of the High Martial Era. The third question discusses the erroneous policies proposed by various countries regarding the restoration of world order. After answering all the questions, he immediately submits the exam. He rubs his head, looking somewhat dejected, but in truth, he is thinking that, as expected, his score should be perfect. He was never actually in a coma for 2 years. Instead, due to a mysterious injury, he repeatedly entered a strange space. The rewards he obtained there awakened his mental power and granted him a photographic memory. Thus, even though he had not attended school for 2 years, his confidence remained intact. Unfortunately, the total score for academics is only 225 points. He still needs to prepare thoroughly for the martial arts exam. After class, he returns home and informs his father that he is back. His father replies that it is perfect timing and dinner is already ready. As Chen walks toward his father, a piece of paper falls from his pocket. His mother picks it up and scolds him for being too clumsy, reminding him to make sure he does not lose his exam administration ticket. At the dining table, his father lays out the dishes. After a moment, he places something on the table and asks Chen if he knows what it is. Chen is shocked to recognize it as qi blood powder. He immediately asks where his father got it. Instead of answering directly, his father smiles and says that since Chen is taking the Hongji class exam, he bought the qi blood powder to help improve his score. Chen says that he can pass even without it. His father places a hand on his shoulder and tells him not to worry. Even if he does not become a martial artist, the family can still support him. There is always a way to make a living. Hearing this, Chen smiles and nods. That night, Chen enters his room and sits on the bed. His thoughts are heavy. One bottle of qi blood powder costs 20,000, nearly draining the family's savings. In these times, if he does not become a martial artist, he cannot guarantee his family's safety. The outcome of tomorrow's exam depends on this very night. He begins to meditate. A blue flame forms in his palms, and his consciousness is drawn into another space, a frozen world surrounded by crystal. Moments later, monsters appear behind him. Since the time he fell into a coma, whenever he sleeps, he enters the crystal space. In this space, countless monsters exist with only one goal: to destroy the crystal, and his duty is to stop them. If the crystal is destroyed, he will fall into a coma again. But if he dies in battle while protecting it, he will immediately awaken in the real world, brimming with energy. At first, he was afraid to gamble with his life, so he repeatedly failed and fell into comas. Later, he discovered that dying in battle granted abundant energy. With each successful defense against a wave of monsters, his mental power increased slightly. As a result, his memory and comprehension became extraordinarily strong. After defeating a massive ape, notifications appear one after another, announcing that the next wave of monsters will arrive in 30 seconds. This is followed by a reminder that only the first successful defense grants rewards. One by one, he beheads the monsters with his sharp sword glowing with red energy. When it is over, he slowly walks away, leaving the corpses behind him. He lets out a sigh and opens his status panel. As he examines it, he realizes that his current stats are still not enough to enter the Hongxi class and become an elite martial artist. Immediately after, a notification appears announcing the arrival of the fifth wave of monsters. From the air, a gigantic red dragon appears, raging with fury, and immediately breathes out blazing flames. Chen dodges quickly, knowing full well that this is the monster's fire breath. Before he can regain his footing, it attacks again with its sharp claws. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps toward the dragon's arm. However, before he can climb up, the dragon suddenly strikes with a powerful tail sweep. He blocks it with his sword, spinning through the air until he lands above the monster. As blue energy envelops his entire body, he realizes that after experiencing countless deaths, he has finally mastered the dragon's attack patterns and rhythm. He unleashes the flowing light sword art, breeze in the forest. Wrapped in blue energy, he crashes downward and strikes the dragon directly in the abdomen. The dragon slams into the ground, letting out a scream of intense pain. Chen stands atop its body, gripping his trembling arm, thinking the monster might go berserk again. He made a brief miscalculation, but fortunately, he is not seriously injured. The dragon attacks once more, but he dodges swiftly. He forces himself to calm down, because he knows that this time, he will definitely win. After dodging, he jumped again and shot upward, landing directly on top of the dragon. He tried once more to attack the monster while gripping his sword tightly. However, the dragon seemed to anticipate his movement and immediately prepared to bite him. With a swift twist of his body, he narrowly avoided the danger. Before he could fully retreat, the dragon launched another attack, its strike nearly brushing his face. Even so, at extreme speed, he managed to evade it once again. What followed was the dragon's eruption of blazing flames, forcing him to retreat immediately. At that moment, he realized that no matter how powerful his opponent was, having a smaller body still came with advantages, one of them being speed. Using all his strength, he hurled his sword. It shot through the air at incredible speed, flying upward and striking the dragon squarely on the head. The monster let out a scream of intense pain as flames continued to pour from its mouth. He did not stop there. In an instant, he appeared behind the dragon and slashed down with all his strength, cutting from its head down along its back, shouting out his skill, drums and gongs beating loudly. After that, he thrust his sword with full force into the dragon's back. A burst of blue energy exploded, streaking upward into the sky and completely piercing through the monster's body. The dragon crashed to the ground with a thunderous boom. Yet even after it fell, he did not let his guard down. The protagonist unleashed another extremely powerful slash at the dragon's body. Then he left his sword embedded in the monster and stood silently behind it. At that moment, a notification appeared. It congratulated him. He had successfully defended against 5 waves of monster attacks, and as a result, his mental power level increased by 1. But that was not all. Another notification appeared. Because he had successfully completed 5 consecutive waves, he obtained the Void Immortal Visualization method. Chen was shocked. As for the increase in mental power, he had little to comment on, but a visualization method was a completely different matter. He recalled the explanation from before. A visualization method was an extremely rare technique that allowed one to actively cultivate mental power. Even if he could raise its level through system rewards, a method that could be used continuously was far more valuable. Another notification appeared, reminding him to prepare, as the next wave of monsters was approaching. Calmly, he turned around while catching his breath, then suddenly froze. His eyes widened as countless gigantic monsters came into view, each with glowing red eyes. The sight alone nearly overwhelmed him. It took him a moment before he fully opened his eyes again. He realized that all of them had higher life intensity levels than his, and there were far too many of them. It seemed he would not be able to pass this stage anytime soon. Because of this, he decided to temporarily set aside the battle and prioritize the visualization method. He took out the glowing book. Blue energy flowed out from it and streamed directly into his head. In an instant, he was transported into a strange dimension, standing alone and gazing upward. Before him was a terrifying existence, smiling, with small yet intensely red eyes. It was so enormous that he was no more than an ant by comparison, as if he could be crushed at any moment. As his body and face seemed to be suppressed by its presence, he suddenly understood. So this was why it was called a visualization method. All he needed to do was stare at the gigantic being. This was a trial. A mental trial. He remained in that state for several minutes. When his consciousness returned, he was already sitting on his bed, wrapped in a gentle blue energy. Moments later, the door to his room suddenly burst open. His younger sister called out to him, telling him that it was time to eat. Chen began changing his clothes, as his entire body was drenched in sweat from training. Jokingly, his sister said that he seemed more handsome now. Chen Du smiled and walked over, messing up her hair as he asked whether he had not always been handsome. His sister repeatedly nodded and begged him to stop messing with her hair. Her cheeks flushed red as she looked at her older brother. While looking in the mirror, Chen Du noticed changes in his body. Only then did he realize that this was likely the effect of the void immortal visualization method. After breakfast, he prepared to leave for the exam. He said goodbye to his father and younger sister. His father advised him to be careful on the way. The scene shifted to Liang City No. 1 High School Gymnasium. Chen Du was stretching while thinking about how effective the void immortal visualization method was. He could clearly feel improvements in every aspect of his body. Suddenly, he turned around when someone spoke behind him, calling him the genius. Chen Du, who had supposedly suspended his studies for 2 years. 3 teenage bullies stood in front of him, grinning, and their leader said that Chen Du had ranked dead last before taking leave. Did he really still have the nerve to participate in the Hongji class assessment? In a mocking tone, they asked whether the great philanthropist was here to take the very last spot. Chen Du replied seriously that it was still better than someone who could not even pass the academic subjects. One of the bullies flew into a rage and shouted, asking what he had just said. Chen Du merely smiled and replied that if he could not hear clearly, then he was not qualified to take the exam. The leader of the bullies was furious and warned him not to be too arrogant. Chen Du calmly replied that he had not named anyone. If it was not him, then there was no need to take it personally. Another boy stepped in to stop them, saying that the assessment was more important. If something happened and Instructor Ling arrived, they would lose much more. The bullies left in annoyance, but their leader threatened that he would come back for him later. The boy who intervened was nervous and said he was finished for sure, but Chen Du calmly said it was fine. The boy explained that Feng Rui was arrogant because his second uncle was the dean of student affairs. He also added that there were rumors that the dean had leaked the martial arts assessment questions to Feng Rui. Only then did Chen Du realize that he needed to be cautious of Feng Rui's schemes and those of certain teachers. Soon, it was announced that the martial arts assessment would be divided into a strength test and a combat duel. The examinees were split into groups of 10. Chen Du immediately lined up and told the boy behind him that the exam was about to begin. When they arrived at the strength test area, a massive device shaped like a giant bear stood before them, with the words, "Number 1, written on it. A last-place elimination system was implemented. Everyone had to strike the sandbag with full force. The one with the lowest score would be eliminated. The boy beside Chen Du complained about the sandbag attack. The last place in each group would be eliminated immediately. He said the strength test this year was excessively unfair. Chen Du remained silent, thinking that there was still a combat duel afterward and that he needed to conserve his strength. Using his speed, he gathered power in his fist and prepared for a powerful punch. Meanwhile, Feng Rui arrogantly said that this was easy and that he still had plenty of strength left. When the assessment began, both Chen Du and Feng Rui prepared themselves with determination. Feng Rui attacked first. His punch was powerful, and the sound echoed loudly, delighting his followers. They even boasted that it had almost reached 1,400 jin in strength. They were certain that their boss would take first place and believed that someone would be eliminated in this round. However, the bullies suddenly broke into a cold sweat when they heard an even louder booming sound and saw the punching bag fly up into the air. Some of them cursed in shock, asking what was going on. They could not believe that it had reached 1,500 jin of punching power, and from someone with only unpassed 5.1 life intensity. They wondered which class Chen Du belonged to. Was he really that strong? Why was his name not in the top 50 of the batch last year? Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at Chen Du. The boy jumped up in excitement and shouted. This was exactly what he had expected from his big brother. In his heart, he could not help but wonder, since when had Chen Du become this overpowered? The teacher observing the exam could not help but think deeply. According to standard benchmarks, A life intensity of 5.1 corresponded to only about 1000 jin of punching force. Yet Chen Du had recorded 1500 jin. Even within the Hongji class, almost no one could achieve such a result. His doubts grew stronger. Could there really be such a monster coming from an ordinary class? The possibility that Chen Du possessed a martial skill crossed his mind, but he immediately dismissed it. Even that would not be enough to explain such a huge gap. He stopped dwelling on it and promptly instructed his assistant to retrieve Chen Du's file. After reviewing the records, he learned that Chen Du was a student from a regular class who had suspended his studies for 2 years. The file stated that his martial skill had reached Tier 1, 55% back then. However, the teacher was certain that Chen Du's current level was far higher. He decided that in the afternoon, he would closely observe Chen Du's true strength. After the strength test, the teacher stood at the center of the ring and loudly announced that the students whose names were called should step onto the stage for the combat duel. The first name called was Chen Du, followed by Feng Rui. The students were shocked. Even though Chen Du had only just returned to school, his score in the strength test was extremely high. Some wondered whether he had a chance of winning. However, others quickly replied that it was impossible. Feng Rui was bound to win. In real combat, martial skill was what truly mattered. Brute strength alone was not enough. At the center of the stage, as the two prepared, Feng Rui arrogantly told Chen Du not to think that just because he had beaten him before, things would be the same now. Chen Du smiled and, in a faintly mocking tone, replied that he hoped Feng Rui would still be able to remain arrogant later. Feng Rui moved immediately. He leapt forward and used his martial arts stops war, launching an extremely fast series of attacks. Chen Du calmly dodged each movement. He blocked the final strike with his sword. With just a few simple moves, he managed to land a hit, striking Feng Rui in the face and causing his nose to bleed. The force of the blow nearly knocked Feng Rui backward, sending him skidding across the floor. Feng Rui burned with rage. In his mind, he was the one who deserved to enter the Hongji class. His eyes reddened with fury as crimson energy enveloped his body. He launched another attack, the technique he called well-preserved reputation. Bursts of energy shot out in succession like threads, flying toward Chen Du. Chen Du dodged and blocked them one by one with his sword. Feng Rui leapt again and unleashed a powerful slash, shouting for Chen Du to die. Part of the stage was shattered by the force of the attack, yet Chen Du suffered only minor damage, barely more than a scratch. Chen Du realized that fighting a human was completely different from battling monsters in the crystal space. Feng Rui once again gathered energy in his hand and swiftly released a devastating blast. Chen Du met it head-on with his sword, which glowed with blue light. Their attacks collided, causing a violent explosion and a deafening shockwave that echoed through the area. Immediately after, Chen Du suddenly unleashed a flurry of attacks. Feng Rui was caught off guard. His weapon was nearly knocked from his hands. A powerful wave of blue energy swept past him. Behind Feng Rui, a leaf drifted gently downward, but in an instant, Chen Du sliced through it. That single slash inflicted severe damage on Feng Rui, and blood spurted out. Even so, Feng Rui refused to give up. He pulled out a dagger from his side and charged forward again, attempting to stab Chen Du. But before he could succeed, Chen Du delivered a heavy punch straight to his face. Feng Rui was sent flying off the stage, nearly losing consciousness. All the students were stunned. Some even wondered if they were dreaming. The boy accompanying Chen Du was completely dumbfounded. He never imagined that the dark horse would be his own big brother. The students behind them could hardly believe their eyes. Some cursed under their breath, while others whispered, asking whether Chen Du had taken drugs. The teacher immediately ordered the medical team to check on Feng Rui's condition, while instructing the next students to prepare for their duels. As Chen Du was about to leave, Instructor Ling stopped him. Ling approached him, and Chen Du immediately bowed, explaining that he had been in a hurry earlier and had not fully controlled his strength, so he apologized. Instructor Ling smiled and said that injuries were normal in combat duels. He advised Chen Du to be more careful next time and not to forget to stretch after returning home, as it was obvious that he had exerted himself in the fight. Chen Du thanked him and left. As Instructor Ling watched him go, he thought to himself that Feng Rui had been utterly defeated, yet Chen Du did not have even a single visible injury, clearly the result of an overwhelming gap in martial skill. The teacher instructed Wang Kai to call the principal, who responded immediately. After that, Chen Du walked toward the virtual combat capsule. It was still early, and his father and younger sister had not yet returned home. In his mind, even though he did not have a permanent sparring partner, it was fortunate that the school had such facilities. By lying inside the capsule, he could be matched with martial artists of a similar level. Since he usually fought monsters in the crystal space, he had rarely used the virtual combat system, so his rank was still only bronze. He plugged the capsule into the outlet, thinking that Feng Rui's humiliation would definitely not end here. Feng Rui would likely send people to harass him and try to stop him from entering the Hongji class. He quietly sat down and activated the virtual capsule. Combat records here were automatically registered in the Blue Star Youth List, an official ranking used for college and transfer examinations, and a recognized list of geniuses across all ecospheres of the world. Even within the Hongji class, only a few students were on this list. Thus, if he could enter it, he would surely gain an opportunity to enter the Hongji class through sheer strength. Upon entering the virtual space, he immediately put on a mask, a pig mask. He appeared in a vast open area and looked around, wondering where his opponent was. He did not realize that the opponent was already above him. A voice spoke, saying that his reaction was too slow. A woman dropped down from above, holding 2 daggers, ready to attack. Chen Du immediately blocked the woman's sudden attack. In a smooth and practiced motion, he parried her attack with his sword, enough to redirect the strike and prevent a direct hit. As a result, his opponent quickly retreated. The woman distanced herself, letting out a slight laugh, clearly pleased with Chen Du's reaction. She praised his quick reflexes, but at the same time warned him, this was not a school test. In a real battle, there was no need to wait to clearly see the opponent, much less to greet them before attacking. Those words struck Chen Du. Determined, he readied his sword. From its blade, a blue light gradually emerged, accompanied by the surge of intense martial presence. He firmly told the woman that he had learned his lesson, and this time, he would not give her another chance to attack stealthily. In an instant, he acted. He swiftly swung his sword, drawing a clear and bright blue wave of energy through the air. The woman easily avoided his consecutive attacks, each movement effortless. Yet on Chen Du's final swing, the sword's edge nearly passed across her face. Without hesitation, she suddenly shifted her position and used the pale dragon point thrust. The woman was surprised, questioning whether that was truly the pale dragon point thrust. It was clearly a piercing strike, but Chen Du executed it as if it were a continuation of the previous motion, not as a separate attack. The woman then kicked Chen Du with full force, sending him flying backward. While doing so, she sternly told him that the flowing light sword art should not be confined to a single form. One must contemplate the essence of the martial art itself. As he flew through the air, Chen Du reflected on her words. She was right. Why had he limited his sword's movements to one form? Yet he couldn't help but wonder how she knew his sword technique. He dodged her next rapid attack, but this time his pig-shaped mask was torn. In the blink of an eye, the woman appeared before him and firmly warned him not to lose focus. It was then that Chen Du fully realized the strength of his opponent. He could not even discern what foundational martial arts she had studied. He tried to meet the next attack head-on, but once again, the woman changed her position. She appeared above him, preparing another strike. She attacked with purple energy, fast and fierce, scolding him for being careless. Chen Du could only curse silently in his mind, calling her a cheating camper. At the same moment, a system window appeared. He had been defeated, losing 10 victory points. Sitting in the virtual space, he seriously reflected on what had happened. He knew that if it were purely a matter of raw strength, he had a chance to win. But his opponent had chosen stealthy attacks. Slowly, he removed his mask and told himself he needed to rethink his martial arts approach. The flowing light sword art had 4 forms, and at present, he had yet to fully control the pale dragon point thrust as a pure piercing move. Its nature was close to that of an assassin, silent, sudden, and lethal. That was when he had an idea. An assassin excelled at stealth attacks, secret and unexpected movements. He realized that his fighting style had been too direct. He wanted to try this new perspective in a real battle. Once again, he pressed the holographic keyboard. A massive man appeared before him, holding a chain with a large iron ball at the end. Chen smiled bitterly. He had just come from a fight against a sneak attacker, and now he faced a natural counter to his weapon. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of godlike matchmaking system this was. Yet he did not hesitate. He ran swiftly, preparing to strike. His sword glowed blue once more, and with full confidence, he unleashed his martial arts. In front of the giant man, his speed and technique were clearly evident. He swung his sword, leaving a blue wave of energy, and shouted, painting the ground as a prison. It struck the man's abdomen but was insufficient to cause serious damage. He immediately followed with an upward sword swing, using golden drums ringing to the heavens, striking the opponent's head directly. The giant man shouted in anger and told Chen that this was not how one used a sword. He warned Chen not to assume that just because he was slightly stronger, he could do whatever he wished. He swung his weapon and hurled the large iron ball toward Chen with full force. Chen showed no fear. As the iron ball approached, he calmly asked if that was really the case. Before the weapon could strike, he activated Breeze in the forest. He pierced the iron ball repeatedly, and due to his strength and speed, the weapon nearly bounced back toward the giant man. In a sudden motion, Chen was on top of his opponent, his sword pointed at the man's neck. The man was shocked, questioning if Chen hadn't just been standing in front of him moments ago. Before he could react, Chen, without hesitation, used the pale dragon point thrust. He thrust his sword with full force, wrapped in blue energy, straight into the opponent's neck. A system notification appeared. He had won against Wang Dachui and received 10 victory points. After the battle, he reappeared in the virtual space, unable to believe what had just happened. It was the first time he had successfully executed the pale dragon point thrust in a real fight. He finally understood why mastery of the sword did not mean sticking to a single form. True skill lay in adaptability. One could be firm or soft, exposed or hidden, move like lightning or flow smoothly and continuously. As the final form of the flowing light sword art, the pale dragon point thrust had taught him an important lesson. The sword could be used openly and honorably, but it could also be silent and deceptive. He smiled quietly as he observed his sword and softly told himself. The sword is a weapon without a fixed form. A system notification appeared, congratulating him. His skill had clearly improved. The flowing light sword art rose from Tier 1, 89% to Tier 1, 90%. More notifications appeared. His flowing light sword art had again improved. Seeing these messages repeatedly, Chen realized that real battles deepened his understanding and skill. Every attack, every defense, every movement carried a new lesson. Thus, within the virtual space, he wished to fight again and again, striving to understand the essence of the flowing light sword art. His battle continued until he felt hunger. At that moment, his bracelet suddenly vibrated. Another notification appeared. He was congratulated for entering the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth list. Chen could not believe what he saw. His name was listed on the Blue Star Youth list, an honor he had not expected. He immediately requested the system to display all the details of his Blue Star Youth list. The data appeared. His ranking was 6,219th. But that was not all. On the 7th Biosphere Youth list, he was ranked 654th. On the Giant Bear Realm Youth List, 55th. On the Purple Cloud District Youth List, 7th. On the Liang City Youth List, he was listed first. Chen Du was overjoyed. He had not expected that after acquiring the Pale Dragon Point Thrust, he would become number 1 on the Liang City Youth List. This guaranteed his spot in the Hongxi class, a class for elite students with potential to become the strongest. The scene shifted outside Liang City number 1 high school. Many students were walking toward the school, including Chen Du. He suddenly froze as someone called his name. A teacher, visibly furious, approached and scolded him loudly. Did he not know how to greet a teacher? Where was his manners? The teacher was Feng Ligyu, dean of students at Liang City number 1 high school and the second uncle of Feng Rui. Chen Du was shocked but quickly offered a proper greeting. Good day, teacher. In his mind, he wondered, who was this man? The teacher approached, pointing at him, saying that in the new semester he would conduct a general inspection of students' attire and conduct. He asked Chen Du what he was wearing. He answered seriously, the school uniform. Students nearly stifled their laughter. Some even commented that Chen Du might be in trouble because of the teacher's anger. They knew Feng Rui had not yet left the hospital, and his second uncle would surely seek revenge. They had also heard rumors that Chen Du had won because he allegedly took banned substances, making his victory deserved. A student could not believe it, thinking Chen Du must be extremely strong. The furious teacher pointed at Chen Du's uniform, shouting that it was unacceptable. Chen Du calmly explained that everything was in accordance with school regulations. The teacher would not accept this, screaming angrily and suddenly swinging his stick. Chen Du immediately caught it with his hand. The teacher continued shouting, saying that Chen Du was defying discipline, opposing a teacher, and would be reported to the principal for expulsion. Amid the tension, someone suddenly asked, who is looking for him? Everyone turned toward the two approaching men. One was Li Mu, principal of Liang City number 1 high school, and the other was Wang Angquan, the mayor of Liang City. The teacher hurriedly pointed Chen Du out to the principal, but he was ignored. Li Mu immediately approached Chen Du politely and asked if he was indeed Chen Du. Chen Du nodded in response. He spoke respectfully as the principal explained that they had come specifically to see him. The principal also introduced Mayor Wang, who directly placed a hand on Chen Du's shoulder as a sign of respect. Chen Du bowed to both the mayor and the principal, then asked if he could know why they were looking for him. The mayor explained that Chen Du had become number 1 on the Liang City Youth List and had entered the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth List. They needed to see what kind of talent he possessed. The mayor joked with a laugh, what kind of monster is this? The teacher and the students were utterly shocked. They could not believe that Chen Du had entered the Blue Star Youth List in the top 10,000, a feat exceeding everyone's expectations. The entire school was thrown into shock when the news was finally confirmed. Chen Du was one of the rare few, 1 in 10,000, officially listed on the Blue Star Youth List. The announcement spread across the campus like lightning, leaving students frozen in disbelief. In that moment, everyone finally understood just how powerful Chen Du truly was. From the strength he had displayed, it was clear that he no longer needed any kind of enhancement to defeat Feng Rui. In a single instant, everything was overturned. The class that had once been mocked and dismissed as weak was completely humiliated. Because of this sudden turn of events, Chen Du was immediately summoned by the principal and instructed to report to the meeting room. There was an important matter to discuss. After the meeting, he was informed that he would officially return to the morning class. Teacher Ling would personally explain what Chen Du had learned the previous day and oversee his formal transfer. When the teacher who had belittled him earlier heard this news, they collapsed into a chair, shock and anxiety written plainly across their face. Inside the meeting room, the students respectfully greeted the mayor and the principal. The guests were then introduced. Senior students from Liang City number 2 High School and Liang City number 1 High School. Among them were Lu Bo and Morit, both well-known figures on the youth list. For a brief moment, their eyes met Chen Du's. None of them recognized one another, yet an unmistakable tension filled the air the instant their gazes crossed. The mayor spoke directly and laid out the plan. 100 cities under the Purple Cloud District would hold a large-scale competition for high school seniors. Each city would send its 3 strongest students, selected based on official data recorded at 6 o'clock the previous evening. The tournament would be overseen by a martial artist above level 15 and hosted at City Number 1 High School. The mayor went on to explain that the top 10 participants of the 100 Cities War would receive significant rewards, bonus points for the college entrance exam and substantial cash prizes, starting at 10 points and 100,000 yuan. As Chen listened, his expression grew serious. He was beginning to grasp the true weight of this competition. The mayor asked who was willing to participate. Morit questioned why virtual combat would not be used. The mayor explained that real combat was far more effective, and martial artists would be present to ensure safety. Participants would wear specialized protective suits and use standardized life intensity levels. Even so, the danger could not be completely eliminated. In his mind, Chen calculated quickly. At his current level, he was already within the top 20 of the entire district, and with his rapid progress, reaching the top 3 was not impossible. The mayor added that even failing to reach the top 10 would still be valuable, as the experience would allow them to measure their strength against their peers. There was no need to place excessive pressure on themselves. Without hesitation, Chen declared that he would participate. Lu Bo and Morit followed, both choosing to join as well. The mayor was pleased and emphasized that true heroes are forged in youth. He informed them that they would be notified once the departure schedule was confirmed and dismissed them to return to class. As Chen walked back to the classroom, he remained deep in thought. He knew that if he could place within the top 3 of the 100 Cities War, his parents would no longer have to exhaust themselves working from morning until night. With that in mind, his goal became crystal clear. No matter what, he had to reach the top 3. When he arrived at the Hongji class, he immediately noticed that the desks and seats were no longer assigned by name, unlike his previous class. He sat down in an empty seat, but before he could settle in, a large student suddenly shouted at him and ordered him to move. The student grabbed Chen by the shoulder and demanded to know who he was and whether he was worthy of sitting there. Chen looked up at the towering figure and couldn't help thinking it felt like a bear had wandered into the classroom. The student's name was Pang Hu, one of the top 10 students in the Hongji class. Chen slammed his hand down on the desk, a quiet but unmistakable warning. He met Pang Hu's gaze head-on, fearless, which clearly caught Pang Hu off guard. Chen couldn't help wondering what era this was, and whether such blatant bullying still existed in schools. Before the situation could escalate further, a hand suddenly appeared between them. Morit stepped in calmly and reminded Pang Hu that it was Chen first day and that he wasn't yet familiar with the rules of the Hongji class. Chen quietly assessed Pang Hu's strength and realized that his life intensity was at least 2 levels higher. Pang Hu sneered and remarked that Chen had simply gotten lucky, allowing him to walk away for now. After Pang Hu left, Morit explained the class system. In the Hongji class, power hierarchy was determined by seat number. Every month, real combat battles were held to rank students, and those in the bottom 10 were forced to stand throughout class for an entire month. Only then did Chen fully understand how brutal the competition within the honors class truly was. Although the seat rankings for the month had already been set, Chen was informed that he would be allowed to issue a challenge to obtain a seat number. When he asked whether there were benefits beyond simply sitting, he was told that rankings determined the monthly resource subsidy. The higher the rank, the greater the rewards. That made the challenge worthwhile. When the instructor arrived, Chen was ordered to report to the combat room. The rules were explained clearly. A challenger could issue up to 3 challenges, and the seat number would be decided through real combat results. Without hesitation, Chen raised his hand and declared that he would challenge the 10th seat. The instructor froze, and the entire class erupted in shock. On his very first day, he was challenging a top 10 position. To many, It seemed like reckless confidence. Yet for Chen Du, the reason was simple. The resource subsidy for 10th place was 50% higher than that of 11th. The risk was worth taking. Pang Hu stepped forward with a laugh, mocking Chen Du and telling him not to cry when he lost. Chen Du calmly confirmed whether Pang Hu was indeed ranked 10th, and Pang Hu answered without hesitation. The instructor ordered Pang Hu to put on his protective gear and enter the arena. As the instructor watched Chen Du, he couldn't help thinking that the boy seemed overly eager to prove himself. But sometimes, it was precisely this kind of hardship that forged a true warrior. Inside the arena, Chen Du and Pang Hu stood facing each other. At the signal to begin, the battle officially started, the first true trial of Chen Du within the world of the Hongji class, a place where strength alone ruled everything. With a smug grin, Pang Hu asked whether Chen Du was ready. His voice dripped with mockery as he told Chen Du to prepare himself. Soon enough, he'd be hugging Pang Hu's leg, crying and begging for mercy. Chen Du's reply was cold and brief. As a faint blue aura began to seep from his body, he simply said, "Let's see." In the next instant, Pang Hu moved. His massive weapon swung forward at terrifying speed, the strike aimed straight at Chen Du's face. Before the blow could fully land, Pang Hu shouted arrogantly, declaring that Chen Du's reaction was far too slow. That shout sent unease through the watching students. One by one, they began analyzing the fight. From their observations, Chen Du's life intensity was a full level lower than Pang Hu's. In battles like this, even a 0.1 gap could determine victory, let alone an entire level. To them, the fight was already over. Chen Du was guaranteed to lose. Yet amid the ridicule, Teacher Lim noticed something strange. His gaze sharpened as he carefully examined Chen Du's data. Chen Du's life intensity had reached 5.2. That shocked him. Just yesterday, it had been 5.1. Only one day had passed. How could it increase so quickly? Meanwhile, Pang Hu laughed loudly, confidently declaring Chen Du defeated. He swung his weapon again with full force. But suddenly, his expression changed. He felt nothing connect. Startled, Pang Hu looked down. There stood Chen Du, steady, calm, and already positioned to counterattack. A brief silence followed. Then Chen Du smiled faintly. In the next instant, he unleashed his move. Pale Dragon Point Thrust. A sharp, explosive burst of blue energy erupted from Chen Du's body, slamming directly into Pang Hu's massive frame. The impact sent Pang Hu flying through the air before he crashed heavily onto the ground. The crowd froze. Immediately, Teacher Lim grabbed Chen Du's arm. Shock was written all over his face as he recognized the technique. He demanded to know whether Chen Du's martial skill had already reached Tier 1 Perfect. Chen Du calmly explained that he had simply gotten lucky and broken through last night. But to Teacher Lim, that explanation was even more terrifying. Advancing nearly 10% overnight was nothing short of unbelievable. Teacher Lim snapped out of his thoughts when Chen Du gestured toward the hand still gripping his arm. With an embarrassed sigh, the teacher let go and straightened himself. Then, in a loud, firm voice, he announced the result. Chen Du wins. The entire room erupted in disbelief. Winning despite being a full level lower was already shocking, but defeating his opponent with a single attack was beyond imagination. Even more, it hadn't expected Chen Du to be a late-blooming genius. Because of his victory, Chen Du claimed seat number 10. Teacher Lim asked if he wanted to continue challenging higher seats, but Chen Du declined. Even if he climbed a few more ranks, the increase in resources wouldn't be significant. Conserving his strength was the smarter choice. After the battle, Morit and several students rushed over, asking to add Chen Du on WeChat for easier communication. Though confused, Chen Du accepted. Even Pang Hu, who had been so arrogant earlier, suddenly humbled himself. He hugged Chen Du's leg, apologized repeatedly, and begged him not to take his earlier words to heart. Chen Du said nothing. In his mind, Pang Hu was simply someone who knew when to bow, and when to stand tall. What Chen Du didn't notice, however, was Teacher Lim's serious gaze, fixed firmly on him. Suddenly, Teacher Lim called Chen Du over and told him to come to the office after class. After class ended, the scene shifted to the principal's office. A knock sounded. The principal called them in. Teacher Lim entered first, followed by Chen Du. Without wasting time, Teacher Lim asked whether Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Tai Martial Arts University still had slots available for early special admission within their ecospheres. The principal was startled. He invited them to sit before asking why Teacher Lim brought this up. Teacher Lim explained that he wanted Chen Du to attempt the early special admission path. The principal reminded them that both universities were among the top 8 famous schools. The minimum requirement was clear: Tier 1 perfect martial skill. Chen Du was still 1% short. That last 1% was an extremely difficult threshold to cross. But Teacher Lim insisted on trying. After all, the school had an instrument capable of measuring martial skill precisely. With a sigh, the principal remarked that Teacher Lim was as stubborn as ever. Still, he pointed to the instrument and explained that its maximum detection limit was Tier 1 high stage, more than enough for testing. Teacher Lim instructed Chen Du to repeat the attack he used during the seat-ranking battle. Chen Du calmed himself and closed his eyes. When he opened them, he stepped forward, tightened his grip, and unleashed Pale Dragon Point Thrust. A terrifying surge of blue energy exploded outward. A violent blast echoed through the room. The instrument shattered completely. The principal turned pale as the device's head flew off and nearly struck him. He stared in disbelief at the wreckage. Teacher Lim explained that he hadn't expected this either. Just yesterday, Chen Du had still been Tier 1 high stage. But overnight, he broke through. He was now fully Tier 1 perfect. Chen Du quickly apologized for destroying the instrument. But Teacher Lim waved it off, declaring that Chen Du was a true combat genius. His battle instincts were terrifying, as if he had been forged through countless life and death struggles. In all of Teacher Lim's years of teaching, he had never encountered a student with such presence. Those words sent a chill through Chen Du. From that moment on, the principal designated him as a priority student. His training resources were temporarily raised to seat number 1 level, and the school planned to endorse him for early special admission through the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament. As long as he placed in the top 3, his admission would be almost guaranteed. Chen Du asked what early special admission meant. Teacher Lim explained that the normal college entrance exam required a life intensity of at least 6.5, nearly impossible to reach in such a short time. But through special admission, reaching Tier 1 perfect 1 month before the exam was enough. After the tournament, professors from Mount Everest and Mount Tai would personally conduct the assessment. Chen Du then asked whether he could still take the normal entrance exam even if he passed special admission. When asked which university he preferred, he quietly named Mount Huang Martial Arts University. The teachers were surprised. Resource-wise, the top 8 schools were nearly identical. Chen Du then explained why. 6 years ago, the giant race attacked the Cloud Thunder district of Lake West City. Even after the City Defense Corps arrived, manpower was insufficient. The result was hundreds of thousands of deaths. All Chen Du wanted was for his family to live safely and peacefully. And if disaster ever struck Liang City, he wanted to be close enough to return immediately, to save them. At that moment, Teacher Lim understood. Such thoughts usually came from those who had already lost their families. But Chen Du, still young, with his family intact, already carried this sense of responsibility. And then Teacher Lim realized. Chen Du was someone capable of bearing immense responsibility. Chen Du explained that he had been considering the 2 schools as backup options. If he failed to enter Mount Huang Martial Arts University, he thought he could enroll in one of them instead. However, the principal immediately told him that this wasn't possible. Once he chose the early special admission route, he would be required to sign a binding agreement with the school, locking in his enrollment. At that moment, Teacher Ling gently placed a hand on Chen Du's shoulder and clarified the situation. If Chen Du managed to place in the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament 1 month later, admission into those 2 schools would be almost guaranteed. The calculations had already been done for him. With early special admission, the required score could even be lowered by an additional 100 points. However, if he chose not to take early special admission, the conditions would be far harsher. His life intensity would need to reach at least 6.5, and his college entrance exam score could only be reduced by a maximum of 30 points. Based on past experience, Teacher Ling advised him not to gamble with his future. Chen Du smiled lightly, thanked both the teacher and the principal, and said he would think carefully before deciding. After the discussion ended, he walked out through the school gates. As he made his way home, his thoughts became clear. Early special admission wouldn't begin until after the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament, which was still more than a month away. From now until the college entrance exam, he planned to live inside the exclusive martial arts training room provided by the school and focus entirely on strengthening himself. During that time, he also intended to test whether medical methods could accelerate the growth of his life intensity. He knew the necessary resources were available. After all, they belonged to the Technology Martial Palace. Within the High Martial Civilization, 3 supreme forces worked together to safeguard humanity's future. The first was the Extreme Martial Palace, responsible for confronting alien civilizations. The second was the Technology Martial Palace, which enhanced humanity's overall strength. The third was the Martial Artist Alliance, tasked with maintaining social order among humans. The Technology Martial Palace had been founded by Durags, recognized as the second strongest individual in the entire civilization. Though his combat power was inferior to Yan, no one could deny his immense contributions to humanity's progress. When Chen Du arrived at a Technology Martial Palace outlet, a woman greeted him politely and asked how she could assist him. Calmly, he stated that he wished to purchase 3 boxes of Thunder Chi blood pills. The woman explained that the pills couldn't be sold directly. Buyers had to pass an endurance test first and invited him to follow her. Chen Du hesitated briefly. He knew the Thunder Chi blood pills were among the best Chi blood medicines available to ordinary people before becoming full martial artists, but they came with serious risks. Once consumed, the medicinal effect turned into lightning that surged through the meridians. If the user failed to maintain intense concentration for 30 minutes, the lightning could spiral out of control and cause severe danger. That was why the endurance test was mandatory. When asked if he was ready, Chen Du answered calmly that he was. He placed his hand on a large testing screen. The woman turned away to initiate the process, then suddenly froze, shock flashing across her face as she stared at the display. Moments later, Chen Du could be seen leaving, while the woman hurriedly contacted the technical department, reporting a possible malfunction in the testing machine. The scene shifted to Chen Du's private martial arts room. He carefully read the instructions on the medicine he had purchased. 1 pill per day for 10 consecutive days constituted a single cycle. At most, 3 pills could be taken at once, still counting as one 10-day cycle. A warning was clearly stated. Taking 3 pills simultaneously would cause pain 5 times greater than a single pill. Regardless of dosage, the effect would last 30 minutes. After 3 to 5 cycles, antibodies would form, and the medicine's effectiveness would gradually weaken. Chen Du realized that the endurance test he had taken earlier represented only half the pain of a single pill, almost trivial. Taking 3 pills at once would mean pain 10 times greater. Even so, he believed he could endure it. Without hesitation, he swallowed all 3 pills. The moment the medicine took effect, his eyes widened. Violent lightning surged through his entire body. He clenched his teeth and endured the unbearable pain. Eventually, the lightning faded, though his body continued to tremble. Only then did he realize it was over. He took a deep breath, drenched in sweat. A notification appeared. Life intensity increased from 5.2 to 5.3. A smile spread across his face. He was now only 1 step away from 6.5. As his life intensity continued rising at an accelerated pace, Chen Du made a decision. He would abandon the early special admission route. He had originally planned to rely on the pills for an entire month, but given his body's condition, 10 days might already be the limit. Based on the funds in his card, he could only last 55 days. That meant he had no choice but to place within the top 2 of the 100 cities hegemony tournament to secure enough funding to continue growing. Not long after, Chen collapsed onto the floor. He hadn't expected the Thunder Chi blood pills to hit so hard on the first use. The residual lightning energy left him temporarily unable to move. Since his body couldn't act, he decided to strengthen his mind instead and entered crystal space. Throughout the night, he fought green firefly giants. Although he didn't fully defeat them, his mental power increased significantly. When he returned, he stretched his hand and smiled faintly, the battle still vivid in his memory. Soon after, the school's resource subsidy arrived. Filled with anticipation, Chen headed to class. The instructor introduced a combat method for martial artists, mental power attachment. The teacher's name was Yadai, the mental power instructor of Hongji class and a member of the Martial Artist Alliance. Chen quickly realized this was a special course exclusive to Hongji class. Only students with Tier 2 mental power were qualified to learn it. He also noticed that the teacher's life intensity exceeded 15. The teacher explained that as martial skills increased, physical strength naturally improved. However, when mental power was used correctly, it could achieve twice the result with half the effort. Physical strength spread throughout the body, while mental power could concentrate excess strength at a single point, greatly increasing explosive force. The ability to mobilize every strand of strength across the body. That was the true role of mental power attachment. Chen noticed that none of the students seemed surprised. Clearly, most of them had already learned and mastered this technique. Still, the teacher reminded them that before mental power reached Tier 10, the amount of physical strength it could harness remained limited. For that reason, he didn't recommend focusing on it excessively. For high college entrance exam scores, life intensity remained the priority. Afterward, the teacher produced a short flute and announced that he would measure everyone's mental power using Song of Exhaustion. He instructed all students to stand and expressed hope that their results would surpass those of the previous semester. He also stated that Chen participation was optional and wouldn't affect his exam score. Chen was surprised. Clearly, the teacher assumed that with only Tier 1 mental power, he would fail the moment the flute sounded. Even so, Chen chose to participate. In the teacher's mind, youth were naturally competitive. Mental power wasn't something easily mastered, and many students in Hongji class struggled with it. Still, since Chen was being observed by Ling Yun, the teacher planned to offer guidance if he failed. Before beginning, the teacher instructed everyone to focus completely and use all their strength. The Song of Exhaustion would drain both body and mind simultaneously. The students responded in unison, signaling their readiness. After the entire class confirmed their agreement, Teacher Yadai slowly raised her flute and brought it to her lips. The moment the first note sounded, a deep and resonant tone filled the room, carrying an unusual sense of power. From the melody, strands of purple energy spread outward like mist, gradually expanding until the entire classroom was enveloped. Soon, a vague figure began to take shape in front of Chen. It was not completely physical, yet it carried a clear sense of threat. Within his consciousness, Chen was drawn into a mental battlefield against an opponent shaped by the teacher's power. Before he could fully assess the situation, a fierce kick rushed toward him. It nearly struck his arm, but he managed to brace himself in time. In that instant, he understood. This was mental-style physical hypnosis. Despite the sudden assault, he remained composed. A faint smile curved at the corner of his lips as he calmly parried the consecutive attacks. Teacher Yadai quickly noticed Chen unusual calmness. He showed no panic, not even the slightest frown. She realized that his mental power was far more resilient than she had initially estimated. The heavy pressure she exerted seemed no more burdensome to him than eating or drinking. As the flute continued to play, she quietly decided to increase the intensity of the mental pressure to test his true limits. Across the room, the situation was completely different for the others. Knees began to weaken. Some students could no longer stand upright. A few cried out in exhaustion, while others clutched desks for support to avoid collapsing. Several openly admitted they could not endure it any longer. To Teacher Yadai, this was not surprising.
She had expected that most of them would not last under such strain. When she turned her focus back to Chen Du, she saw that although his body trembled slightly, he remained standing. He did not give in. Her curiosity deepened. Murmurs spread among the students. How could Chen Du still stand under this level of mental assault? She knew that Chen Du's family was not wealthy, making it almost impossible for him to rely on mental enhancement items. That led her to consider whether he possessed an innate talent for mental cultivation. Martial arts and mental power followed entirely different paths, and it was rare for someone to excel in both. In all her experience, she had never encountered a student quite like this. Meanwhile, Fang Hu could no longer withstand the pressure. Breathing heavily, he dropped to his knees and grabbed a desk to keep from collapsing. Even in his exhaustion, a faint smile appeared on his face. To him, Chen Du's endurance proved that his earlier defeat had not been due to weakness. His opponent had truly been strong. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the classroom. Everyone turned to see that the class number 1, Morid, had fallen to the floor. In that moment of defeat, he realized that Chen Du's dominance was not limited to physical strength. His mental power was equally extraordinary. If only his background had been different, he might have had the ability to enter one of the top 3 universities. Teacher Ya Dai could not conceal her shock. The top student had collapsed at level 6, yet Chen Du had endured into level 7. Determined to witness his ultimate limit, she raised the mental intensity by another level. Standing with his eyes closed, Chen Du's breathing grew heavy. In his mind, the towering image of a muscular man appeared, preparing for a final assault. A moment later, it charged forward. The force of the punch drove him back. When an even stronger strike landed, it felt as though he had been thrown from his position. He abruptly opened his eyes. Sweat soaked his forehead, and his breathing was uneven. He bent slightly, feeling a weight that pressed not only on his mind but on his physical body as well. He now fully understood that a mental battle could produce real effects on flesh and bone. Teacher Ya Dai fell into silent contemplation. Mental power exceeding one's life intensity was rare. Combined with Chen Du's high martial arts talent, it formed a nearly unseen pairing. In her view, he might walk the path of mental immunity, using his own strength to shatter opponents. A perfect warrior against the Big Eye civilization. After class, in the principal's office, the principal's voice rang out in disbelief upon hearing of Chen Du's dual talent. Teacher Ya Dai confirmed that she had personally witnessed everything. Teacher Ling added that he had spoken with Chen Du and believed the young man had the potential to reach level 20 and become a soaring martial artist. Teacher Ya Dai questioned whether such a level truly still existed and whether soaring martial artists could literally fly. The principal nearly held his head in excitement as he explained that a soaring martial artist was 1 in 10,000 favored by fate. It was a realm suited for geniuses like Chen Du. It would be a waste if he stopped at the top 8 famous schools. He should aim for one of the 3 top-tier martial arts universities that did not recruit through the regular entrance examination. He mentioned that after the 100-city hegemony tournament, Black Dragon Martial Arts University would hold a freshman selection in Cyber City. He instructed Teacher Ling to encourage Chen Du to participate, and Teacher Ling readily agreed. Later, in the faculty office, Chen Du politely asked if he had been summoned. Teacher Ling asked whether he was familiar with Black Dragon Martial Arts University. Chen Du replied that he knew it was among the top 3 institutions but lacked detailed knowledge. The teacher explained that it did not accept students through the regular entrance exam and only selected outstanding geniuses. To become a soaring martial artist, one needed a life intensity of 9.9 and Tier 1 mid-stage strength. Yet even among high school martial artists, only about half reached the mid-stage. Although qi and blood medicine could raise life intensity, not everyone could afford it. Many could not even purchase basic qi and blood milk, and by the time they earned enough money, their bodies might already have passed the optimal period for such cultivation. When asked whether he wished to try, Chen Du took a deep breath and answered seriously that he would attempt the selection. Internally, he understood the weight of possibly leaving his family behind, but he also knew he had to face this opportunity. Teacher Ling placed a hand on his shoulder and told him to give it everything he had. He could treat the top 8 famous schools as a safety net through early special admission while striving for a higher goal. With only 1 month remaining before the 100-city hegemony tournament, Chen Du decided to focus entirely on that objective. The next morning at home, his mother called him for breakfast. His sister noticed that something about him had changed in recent days. His posture was straighter, and his expression was harder to read. At the table, he informed them that he would temporarily leave at school to concentrate on training for the upcoming tournament. His mother reminded him not to neglect rest. His sister wondered why he had not moved earlier. He explained that every Hongzi class student had a personal martial arts room with resting facilities, and he now had sufficient resources. His father encouraged him to train diligently. After finishing his meal, Chen Du said goodbye and stepped out of the house. As he walked away, his family watched with hope and trust in their eyes, reminding him to take care of himself and give everything he had to reach first place. As soon as Chen Du stepped onto the campus, he did not slow down. His pace was steady and purposeful, and in his mind he repeatedly went over the resources allocated to him: 90 bags of Qi blood milk, 30 Qi blood pills, and 4 packs of perfect Qi blood powder. All of them were stored in the martial arts room, available for him to use at any time. By his estimation, their total value would not be less than 50,000. It made him realize even more clearly that the path of martial arts was not measured by diligence and talent alone. It required substantial financial support as well. When he reached his room, he first organized his belongings neatly before deciding to devote more time to training. Simply attending classes would not be enough. If he wanted to secure his position, he had to invest more effort into actual practice. After putting everything in order, he headed straight to the training area. Standing in the center, he instructed the robot to increase the gravity to 5 times the normal level. The robot responded immediately and activated the mode. In an instant, the entire space grew heavy. The air itself seemed denser. A thin layer of blue energy wrapped around Chen Du's body as he adjusted his grip on his sword. The pressure felt as though an enormous force was pressing down on him. Under such conditions, every movement had to be precise and controlled. The robot announced that the 4th round had begun. Chen Du raised his sword and faced the first wave of attacks. He knew that under extreme gravity, directly clashing with brute force was dangerous. A single miscalculation could injure his muscles or even fracture a bone. Instead of confronting the robot's strength head-on, he redirected the punches and used careful movements to conserve energy. A heavy punch shot toward him, but he narrowly avoided it. The robot provided an analysis. His evasion success rate was high, but energy consumption remained significant. Before he could fully reset his stance, the robot attacked again, striking high with a punch while delivering a low kick at the same time, effectively sealing off the usual escape paths. Chen Du did not panic. Instead, he incorporated the gravity into his strategy. Just as the kick was about to land, he leapt upward, dodging the punch, and with the added weight pulling him down, he precisely landed on the robot's shoulder. From that position, he launched a swift counterattack. His sword connected, forcing the robot to stagger back slightly as a faint trail of smoke rose from its side. The robot's movements changed. Its eyes glowed red as it announced a shift to its final protocol. Suddenly, it accelerated and charged again. Under 5 times gravity, Chen Du struggled to keep up with the increased speed. He was gradually cornered by the relentless assault and eventually slammed to the ground. Recognizing the outcome, he called out to the robot, "Little bear," to deactivate the gravity mode. Moments later, the pressure in the room returned to normal. He sat down and began cultivating. He could feel that his physical endurance had reached its limit for the day. To avoid wasting time, he activated the Void Immortal Visualization method to strengthen his mental power while his body rested. In his mind, glowing eyes slowly emerged from the darkness, followed by the vague outline of a massive being watching him in silence. He did not retreat. Instead, he intensified the blue energy and confronted the image directly. After some time, he opened his eyes and noticed that his mental power had increased by 0.3. Even so, his body was exhausted and trembling slightly. He drank Qi blood milk to replenish his energy, but the effect was not enough to fully restore him. He decided to sleep. Before drifting off, he resolved to continue training in the crystal space. In his dream, his consciousness appeared within the crystal space. He pulled the sword from the ground, and the surroundings shifted immediately. One after another, green firefly giants materialized around him. The first time he had faced them, he had not understood their nature and had failed to defeat even one. Now, he was prepared to try again. Releasing the blue energy, he charged at one of the giants. He quickly observed that the green section on their bodies was not a mere marking but the source of their healing energy. Their defense was thick, and they possessed no other special abilities. Destroying that green core was clearly the key to bringing them down. As he leapt from one giant's head to another, he noticed that his movements felt lighter and more controlled than before. The gravity training had significantly improved his balance and timing. Because of this, he decided to continue using that method to strengthen himself. With another precise strike, one of the giants finally collapsed. As the battle continued, he understood that this kind of preparation would greatly increase his chances of entering the top 3 in the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament. Several days later, his team arrived in High City for the tournament itself. When they stepped into the hotel, Chen Du noticed the luxury of the surroundings. The lobby was elegant and meticulously maintained, far beyond anything he had experienced before. Instructor Ling excused himself to handle the arrival arrangements, leaving the students waiting. While they stood there, a loud voice suddenly echoed across the lobby. Chen Du turned and saw a student with his hair tied back arguing angrily with the receptionist. It was Wu Sang from the Lu City participating team. He insisted that he had arrived on time and violated no rules, so he could not accept being treated as if he were at fault. He demanded a clear explanation, but the receptionist, visibly nervous, struggled to respond. Wu Sang took a deep breath and slowly placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. From his posture and the tension in his shoulders, it was obvious that if the matter could not be resolved with words, he was prepared to settle it by force.
Lu Bo and Morit were stunned when Chen Du remarked on the overwhelming power of that man's sword intent. In his estimation, the stranger's martial arts level was likely no lower than his own. This left the two questioning if it was truly possible for someone who looked like a simple country local to possess such elite skill. Amidst the rising tension, Zhou Xiaogu, a member of the High City participating team, suddenly spoke up. She gave a sharp command to settle the matter, make him sign it. As for his teammates, consider them forfeited. Everyone turned to look, gasping as they recognized the speaker. It was the Sea Princess. Cries of shock erupted from the crowd. Many noted she was even more stunning in person than in her photos. Some recalled seeing comments online claiming she wasn't photogenic, and seeing her now, they realized those rumors were true. The camera simply couldn't capture her real beauty. Chen Du was visibly startled to hear she was the Sea Princess. Noticing this, Morit nudged him, asking if he had a crush. Morit quickly advised him to give up on that dream immediately. Her name was Zhou Xiaogu, the only daughter of Principal Zhou Cheng of High City No. 1 High School. In terms of family power, wealth, reputation, and raw talent, she stood at the very peak, a true, favored child of heaven. According to Morit, Chen Du didn't stand a chance. But Chen Du was deep in thought. He felt certain he had seen that face before. Suddenly, it clicked, she was the cunning camper who had ambushed him in virtual combat, the girl who sold nuclear bombs. Her face was identical. Back then, he assumed her avatar was a system-generated masterpiece. He never imagined a real person could actually be that beautiful. Morit grew even more confused when he saw Chen Du start to smile. Chen Du smiled with a new sense of determination, amused by the irony of meeting an internet friend in real life. However, he was sure she wouldn't recognize him. In their previous encounter, her martial arts technique was a step above his, reaching Tier 1 perfect. He wondered just how strong she had become since then. He realized now that joining the 100-city hegemony tournament was definitely the right move. A short while later, as hot tea simmered on the table and the team relaxed on the sofa, Teacher Ling spoke up. He informed them that the team leader had called a meeting to announce that this year's rules had changed. Before the elimination rounds, a badge snatch battle had been added. The three teammates asked for clarification, and Chen Du pressed for the specifics. Teacher Ling explained that the tournament would span 3 days with 3 distinct rounds. The first round, the badge snatch battle, would take place the following day over the course of 13 hours inside a forest. They needed to collect badges inscribed with 2 characters, High, and Martial. Once the badges were secured, they had to reach the finish line to report. A team's success would depend on how many members made it to the end. When Chen Du asked about the total number of badges, Teacher Ling revealed there were only 50 High badges and 50 Martial badges. This meant a maximum of only 50 teams could pass. Consequently, at least half of the participants would be eliminated on the very first day. The second round would be a 1 versus 1 elimination tournament. Teacher Ling warned that there would be very little rest. 150 contestants would battle throughout the day to narrow the field down to the top 10 for the final round. While opponents would be chosen randomly, the system would ensure that teammates would not have to fight each other. Lu Bo and Morit breathed a massive sigh of relief at that news. Both were thinking the same thing. Thank goodness we don't have to face that madman Chen Du. As Teacher Ling described the rewards of gold and jewelry, he added that the third round was the top 10 battle. Reaching this stage practically guaranteed success, as everyone in the top 10 would receive bonus points and cash rewards. Breaking into the top 3, however, would depend on their physical condition. 3 days of continuous combat with almost no rest and the constant threat of injury would take its toll. The winner of the top spot might not necessarily be the strongest in a one-on-one fight, but they would certainly be the one with the most comprehensive overall strength. He then emphasized a critical point: killing was strictly forbidden, both in the competition and in real life. This was a rule to be followed for a lifetime. Their true enemies were from an alien civilization, so he sternly commanded them never to point their weapons at their fellow humans. On the day of the battle, they would wear special suits to equalize everyone's life intensity. Teacher Ling added that the team leaders would enter the area in secret to act as protectors. However, he warned them that if he was forced to intervene, it meant they were officially eliminated. Tomorrow depends on you, he told them. Believe in yourselves, no matter what happens, you are the best. The three responded with a confident roar of agreement. The next day, at High City No. 1 High School, Chen stood amidst the crowd in front of what appeared to be a massive forest. He wondered if it was actually a real woodland. In the center of the gathering, Principal Zhou Cheng stood and announced that everyone had arrived. He introduced himself as the principal and one of the organizers of the tournament. He explained that the gate before them led to a forest that was part of a special environment unique to the school. It was a dimensional rift, formed hundreds of years ago when the 9 great planets, known as the Spirit Realm, collided. This specific area was the lowest difficulty level, a level 1 spirit realm known as the Forest Wolf Woods. Chen Du whispered to himself, questioning if this was truly the spirit realm, that mysterious, uninhabited space crawling with monsters. The principal added a reassuring note, explaining that there was no need for concern because the space was remarkably stable. It had been personally certified by Ryan, the founder of the Martial Artists Alliance and the third strongest person in the world, guaranteeing the area's structural integrity. However, the principal was blunt about the stakes. The trial still carried a genuine risk of death. He urged every participant to stay vigilant and look out for one another. He then signaled out a student named Wu Zhang, warning him not to assume he could operate as a lone wolf just because he arrived solo. The school would assign him teammates suited to his skill level. Instead of being relieved, Wu Zhang looked visibly annoyed, leaving Chen Du wondering why the guy seemed so frustrated by the arrangement. Using his iris authentication, the principal unlocked the massive gates. As they creaked open, he ordered everyone to prepare for entry into the Forest Wolf Woods. The students filed in one by one until they reached a massive, glowing sigil on the ground. Whispers filled the room as people wondered if they had already arrived at their destination. The principal smiled and clarified that the actual location of the spirit realm was a top-tier secret. What they were looking at was a magic array, a transport system to the Forest Wolf Woods. He explained it was a fail-safe meticulously crafted by their predecessors. If the dimensional rift were ever to collapse, this array would serve as an emergency exit to bring them back safely. A system announcement echoed through the hall, instructing everyone to step inside the array. In a matter of moments, each group would be teleported to a random spawn point within the woods. The map showed 300 marker points, but there was a catch. Only 100 held genuine badges, while the rest were fakes. The voice wished them luck and signaled the activation. A brilliant purple light erupted from the sigil, shooting upward toward the sky. In an instant, Chen Du was transported. Blinking against the sudden glare of the sun, he looked around, questioning if this was truly the place. Behind him, Morit asked which marker point they should head toward. Checking the system map, Chen Du noted that their luck seemed solid. There was a badge marker very close to their starting position. They decided to check it out immediately to see if it was the real deal. Morit and Lu Bo followed, grinning in agreement. After a short trek, they reached a spot marked by a large, tombstone-like pillar. They threw a stone at it to test for traps or fakes, and a moment later, a badge inscribed with the character, "Hi," materialized. Chen Du snatched it up. Examining the metal in his hand, he smiled, admitting he had expected the markers near the starting zone to be decoys. He hadn't expected to find a real badge so easily. Lu Bo clapped him on the back, ecstatic about their early lead, and suggested they hit the next marker point right away. But Chen Du's instincts suddenly flared. Without a second's hesitation, he lunged forward, grabbing Lu Bo and pulling him out of harm's way. 2 arrows thudded deep into the dirt where they had just been standing, a clear sign that they were being ambushed.
Chen Du was surprised that anyone could be faster than his own team. He immediately readied his weapon as a group from Kun City blocked their path. The strangers wasted no time, demanding to know if they were from Liang City. They gave a blunt ultimatum. Hand over their badges immediately or face elimination. Based on the red markings on their arms, Chen Du realized these students were indeed from Kun City. They hailed from a developed metropolis, and their reputation for power preceded them. In this world, the larger the city, the more formidable its students usually were. Meanwhile, in the auditorium of High City No. 1 High School, spectators noticed that a confrontation was already brewing. It had been less than 10 minutes since the participants entered the arena. The quick encounter was likely due to the teams having nearly identical starting points and destinations. At the same time, The Kun City principal saw what was happening on the screens. He tapped Principal Li Mu on the back and offered a mock apology, joking that he would cover the Liang City team's plane tickets home that very evening. Principal Li Mu sat in silence, wondering how his school had ended up in a fight so early in the first round. Back in the field, Chen Du asked the Kun City leader if they really thought they were capable of eliminating his team. The leader, visibly annoyed, advised them to just surrender the badges quietly. Chen Du only smirked, noting that being from a big city didn't automatically make them the stronger fighters. The Kun City leader moved into a combat stance, radiating a powerful surge of energy. He declared that Chen Du's group would be the first team eliminated. He shouted his name, Lin Yuan, and claimed he was destined to be the spirit king of Kun City. Lin Yuan lunged forward with explosive speed. Morit and Lu Bo prepared to intercept him, but Chen Du stepped in front of them. He told his teammates he would handle this alone. Despite the teammates' confusion, the Kun City team attacked in unison. They thrust their spears together, executing a technique known as the Comet Spear Art Third Stance, boiling the loot and burning the crane. As they descended from the air, Lin Yuan shouted that the Liang City group had no idea how massive the power gap truly was. Chen Du remained perfectly calm. He parried the simultaneous spear strikes with a single sweep of his sword, not backing down even an inch. Lin Yuan was stunned. He hadn't expected his full force attack to be stopped so easily. He gritted his teeth and pressed forward, putting even more weight into the assault. Chen Du defended the barrage effortlessly. He realized they were both at level 5 life intensity, but he noticed that Lin Yuan's martial art was at the peak of the Tier 1 high stage, which explained his ego. His two teammates, however, were not nearly as skilled. Deciding to end the fight, Chen Du activated his level 9 mental power attachment. A massive wave of energy erupted from his blade, blasting his opponent's back. He followed up instantly with the flowing light sword art first stance, painting the ground as a prison. Blue energy rippled through the air. With one violent swing of his sword, he released the energy toward the Kun City team. When they hit the ground, only Lin Yuan remained conscious. Lin Yuan cursed to himself, sweating and shaking as he wondered how Chen Du's sword could feel so much heavier than his own spear. Before he could even recover, Chen Du moved in for the final strike, intending to neutralize the strongest threat first. He prepared the flowing light sword art second stance, golden drums. But just as he was about to launch the attack, a hand suddenly reached out and caught his blade, stopping his movement cold. Chen Du's eyes widened in shock as the newcomer spoke, admiring the sheer power behind his sword strike. Lin Yuan shouted desperately, calling out to teacher Lin Bei and insisting he could still fight. But the teacher only looked at him and told him it was over. He had lost. The teacher explained that Chen Du had already managed to shred their clothing, a clear sign that his attack power had reached level 7 life intensity. He pointed to another teammate who was badly injured, his uniform practically in tatters. He told Lin Yuan that even if he had blocked the first sword strike, he would never be able to block the second. With that, he advised the group to withdraw. As he watched Chen Du, the teacher couldn't help but think that the boy's talent far surpassed Lin Yuan's. He was certain that Chen Du would become a formidable warrior in the future. Meanwhile, teacher Ling Yun, who was hiding behind a nearby tree, could barely hide a smile at what had unfolded. The Kun City team said their goodbyes, telling Chen Du they looked forward to his performance in the finals. Before they left, Lin Yuan called out to Chen Du to ask for his name. He then introduced himself properly, admitting that while he rarely acknowledged anyone as stronger than him, Chen Du was one of the few exceptions. Chen Du didn't say much in return. He simply declared that, in the end, the top spot would be his. The scene then shifted to the High City No. 1 high school auditorium. Principal Li Mu laughed as he told his friend, Principal Cao Yan, that he should be thanking him for the win. He even teased him by asking what time he wanted his plane ticket booked for the trip back to Liang City that night. From behind them, Mayor Ku remarked to old Zhao that he didn't expect so many students to reach the Tier 1 perfect rank in martial arts this year. Including the boy from the Liang City team, there were now 4 of them. However, old Zhao corrected him, stating that there were only 3. The spectators were shocked to see that the Liang City team had already secured 2 badges. One person questioned why they were heading toward the Moonmark exit with only 1 badge each. If they tried to leave now, wouldn't they be disqualified immediately? Meanwhile, in the Forest Wolf Woods, Morit and Lu Bo were confused. They asked Chen Du if he really intended to take down Wu Zhang right then and there. Chen Du answered seriously, deciding to speak plainly. With his strength, he explained, getting 2 badges wasn't the difficult part. But he wanted to win the championship. To him and Wu Zhang, first place wasn't just about prestige. He needed the $1 million prize money just to survive. His teammates were stunned by his words. Chen Du broke it down simply so they could understand the situation. The seeded players in this competition are Zhou Xiaogu and Ku Zhongtian from the High City team, and Wu Zhang from the Lu City team, he said. High City has 2 heavy hitters, and we can't beat them both. But if we eliminate Wu Zhang now, our chances of winning go up. Lu Bo understood the logic but worried that they were just helping the High City team by removing their biggest rival. Chen Du shook his head. If he didn't take out Wu Zhang now, he might not even make the top 3. Logically, all 4 of them could make it to the second round, but teammates aren't allowed to fight each other in that stage. Since High City is the host, he suspected they would intentionally pair him against Wu Zhang to clear the way for their own players. In the second round, even if I or Wu Zhang wins, we would still have to face 2 High City members back-to-back in the third round, Chen Du pointed out. He then asked them the ultimate question. Do you really think anyone can defeat 3 Tier 1 perfect opponents in just 2 days? Morit was not surprised by Chen Du's absolute determination to take down Wu Zhang. Lu Bo remarked that the situation felt like a form of secret manipulation happening under the table, describing the method as quite dark. However, Chen Du countered that the situation was not entirely fair for them either. He admitted he could not guarantee a victory against Wu Zhang. If they failed, they would be eliminated in the very first round. Lu Bo replied that they were well aware of their own strength. Their only real goal was simply to participate. Morit then questioned how they would find Wu Zhang, doubting if they could actually track him down. Chen Du explained that given Wu Zhang's arrogant personality and immense strength, he would undoubtedly head toward the area with the most badge marks to seize them. Their plan was to intercept him on the path toward the exit where the badge marks were most concentrated. After a short while, they were sprinting toward a mountainous incline. Upon reaching the top, they looked down and saw a group fighting a wolf surrounded by red energy. Chen Du recognized it immediately as a BB wolf. He wondered if this was the monster from the crystal space and why it appeared in this location. The Alien Race Illustrated Handbook records all monsters discovered by humanity to date, but creatures from the crystal space are not in that book. Because of this, he realized that all monsters in the crystal space likely originated from the spirit realm. Suddenly, a girl from the group below screamed. She cursed angrily and pointed at Wu Zhang as the cause of their current situation. In that moment, the BB wolf lunged forward and attacked the girl's 2 companions. They shouted for her to run and escape. But before the beast could reach her, blue energy suddenly flowed toward the monster. The girl thought her teacher had come to help, but when she looked up, she saw Chen Du instead. He turned to her with a smile and asked if they had seen Wu Zhang. A male student being supported by Morit confirmed that they had. He explained that after finding their first mark point empty, they encountered Wu Zhang fighting 10 monsters just like this one while heading to the second mark point. They had intended to follow their teacher's orders to retreat if they met Wu Zhang, but they didn't expect the monsters to target them and chase them to this area. Chen Du immediately asked where the battle took place. The man pointed in a specific direction. When Chen Du looked that way, he realized there were no badge marks in that direction. He wondered what Wu Zhang was doing there, noting that when something is strange, something is usually wrong. However, if their story was true, Wu Zhang's stamina would likely be nearly exhausted by now. For Chen Du, this was a rare opportunity. He didn't hesitate and immediately ran in the direction indicated, calling his 2 companions to follow. While running, Morit commented that they were very lucky to find the opportunity they wanted so quickly. Lu Bo asked Chen Du if he had a plan for the coming fight. Chen Du did not answer immediately. He remembered how the young man pointed out the location and warned the 2 not to act rashly. He had an uneasy feeling he couldn't explain. He ordered the 2 to follow his commands at all times from then on. Morit and Lu Bo paused and looked at each other before agreeing. They continued running in the direction the student had pointed out earlier. They were unaware that a fierce, wolf-like monster with glowing red eyes was watching them from a distance. After a long run, they suddenly stopped. Lu Bo asked if they had taken a wrong turn, as they had been running for a long time without seeing Wu Zhang. At that moment, Chen Du sensed movement nearby. He told his companions they had been tricked. Morit and Lu Bo were shocked by what they saw. Wolves with a terrifying presence were closing in on them. They asked what these creatures were. Chen Du answered seriously that only half of what the 3 students said was true. They did see Wu Zhang, but he was certainly not in this direction. Those students had seen their badges and intentionally pointed them this way, wanting the BB wolves to kill them so they could take their badges afterward. Lu Bo noted that the monsters numbered around 20, concluding that they had stumbled directly into a wolf den. Morit realized just how cunning the other 3 students had been, comparing the move to luring a tiger only to have it devoured by a pack of wolves. As Chen Du seriously observed the wolves, a blue energy began to radiate from his entire body. He noticed that although there were fewer of them compared to the monsters in the crystal space, their life intensity was significantly higher. He warned his two companions to ensure they did not bleed, recalling how the BB wolves went into a berserk state at the sight of blood during the earlier attack. He also pointed out that these creatures typically attack using the spikes on the back of their claws, telling the two to stay alert. Without another word, he was the first to charge, leaping forward to strike a wolf. Meanwhile, the events were being broadcast on a large monitor for everyone to see. A spectator commented that the Liang City team had walked straight into a wolf den, likely due to carelessness or failing to check their navigation. The observer noted that they might be eliminated immediately after winning only one fight, as facing 20 native wolves was a daunting task. It was mentioned that perhaps only Zhou Xiaogu of the High City team possessed the strength to handle such a group. Watching this, Principal Li Mu felt a sense of dread, wondering if Chen Du and the others were about to be knocked out in the very first round. Principal Cao Yan took the opportunity to mock him, suggesting they might all be heading home together that night. Mayor Ku turned to Principal Zhou and asked what he thought the children's chances of survival were against a medium-sized wolf den. Principal Zhou replied that their chances were lower than 10%. Mayor Ku was incredulous at such a low probability. Principal Zhou explained that the badge snatch battle was specifically designed to shatter the illusions of young geniuses. He remarked that while their cities were developed and comfortable, the world outside was a ruin filled with monsters. It was a necessary reality check for students destined to become martial artists. Mayor Ku argued that the BB wolves could be avoided if they stayed away from the dens, but Principal Zhou clarified that the badges were intentionally placed behind these seemingly safe wolf dens. If students followed their navigation blindly without thinking, they would inevitably pass through these areas. While most dens had few wolves, the Liang City team was simply unlucky to encounter a medium-sized den with 20 of them. Hearing this, Mayor Ku finally understood the situation, though he wondered if his own High City team would make it through. Principal Zhou assured him not to worry, stating that with Zhou Xiaogu and Zhongtian, even a large wolf den could not stop them. Back at the fight, Chen Du declared with full confidence that the wolves were weak and wouldn't even last a single blow. He unleashed a powerful determination and a blue aura that enveloped his body. Even as several wolves lunged at him, he showed no fear. He calculated that this was the ideal setup. He would draw the majority of the attacks so that, as long as the BB wolves didn't go berserk, his teammates could survive the encounter. Lu Bo cried out Chen Du's name when he saw the pressure his friend was under, but Morit insisted they had to finish off their own targets quickly to help him. Lu Bo then suggested that Morit handle 3 of the wolves while he took on another 3. At that moment, Chen Du executed the technique painting the ground as a prison, swinging his sword with such force that a wave of blue energy sliced through the wolves. He immediately followed this with the second stance of the flowing light sword art, golden drums ringing to the heaven. His body erupted with energy, and with a swift motion, his glowing golden sword cut through a wolf. Finally, he used the third stance, breeze in the forest, tearing several more wolves apart as his sword carved blue streaks of light through the air.
3 opponents suddenly ambushed Chen Du from behind, but he didn't show even a hint of surprise. In a flash, he executed the flowing light sword art, port stance, fallen dragon point thrust. With one swift and precise motion of his blade, he took down all 3 BB wolves simultaneously. In his mind, every movement was crystal clear. Having fought these creatures repeatedly in the crystal space, he had memorized their patterns, behavior, and coordination. This situation was nothing new to him, but he knew this was no ordinary fight. Before long, a loud curse echoed through the air. Chen Du glanced over and saw Morit struggling desperately, straining to block the relentless attacks of the BB wolves. Inside Morit's mind, anger and frustration were at war. He couldn't accept that he, who used to be a leader, was now becoming a burden to the group. As the BB wolves behind Chen Du repositioned themselves, he quickly analyzed the situation. He estimated that most had a life intensity of level 5, while the strongest was nearly 6.5. Although he could unleash power reaching level 7, he knew that if the monsters didn't make a move, he would have a hard time finding an opening to counterattack. He also noticed Lu Bo, who was currently locked in combat with 3 BB wolves. The fight was evenly matched, and it was obvious Lu Bo couldn't offer help to anyone else. In Chen Du's mind, the problem was clear: he was still falling short. He needed a bit more strength and speed. Just a small improvement. If his sword were only faster, he might be able to change the outcome. At that moment, a BB wolf howled and lunged at him. He didn't hesitate, meeting it head-on with a series of slashes. With a piercing gaze, he continued to calculate, 2 minutes. He just had to endure for that long. If he could thin the pack down to just one, they still had a chance. Slowly, his expression shifted. A strange light flickered in his eyes as he repeatedly pushed himself. Faster, he had to go even faster. He maintained his relentless assault until he finally felt the right rhythm. As long as he held onto that rhythm, they had a shot at survival. Suddenly, he whipped his head around at the sound of Lu Bo's scream. The situation was spiraling. Morit had been wounded in the arm. Facing the monsters, a trembling Morit started to apologize to Chen Du, but Chen Du cut him off immediately. Shouting loudly, Chen Du explained that the scent of blood would cause the BB wolves to go berserk. He ordered Lu Bo and Morit to retreat and leave the area at once. The two were startled and nearly protested, but before they could speak, a BB wolf went berserk and charged straight for Morit. In the blink of an eye, Chen Du leapt to intercept it, crashing down onto the monster and unleashing a powerful strike that finished it off. He didn't second guess himself. He declared that he would face the remaining enemies alone. Since teacher Ling Yun was nearby, he wouldn't be in total danger. He added that this was their only way to secure a chance at the next round. They had no choice but to pull back. Ultimately, Lu Bo was forced to comply, pulling Morit away while admitting they could no longer continue the fight. As Chen Du pulled his sword from the carcass of the dead BB wolf, he reconsidered the situation. When these creatures go berserk, their strength and speed increase, but they lose their sanity, attacking whoever is closest to them. This wasn't new to him. He had faced over 30 berserk BB wolves back in the crystal space. Now, he was facing that same danger once again. In an instant, a BB wolf charged at him with incredible speed. But before it could make contact, he immediately parried it with his sword, meeting its sharp claws head-on. At that moment, a critical realization hit Chen Du. The monsters facing him had reached a life intensity of level 7. Meanwhile, inside the High City No. 1 High School auditorium, the atmosphere was thick with heavy tension. Everyone's eyes were glued to the large screen, watching the battle unfold. One principal spoke up, noting that if Chen Du were to face a medium-sized wolf in a berserk state, his match would likely end there, even if he had mastered 99% of Tier 1 martial arts. Another shook his head in disappointment, having hoped to see a clash between the four great perfections in the second round. A third principal offered a slight smile, remarking that if Zhou Xiaogu or Ku Zongtian were in that position, the fight would have been over in an instant. Amidst the chatter, Mayor Ku silently observed the scene. He couldn't hide his admiration. Even now, Chen Du was still standing. Principal Zhou agreed, but there was a strange tone in his voice. Noticing this, Mayor Ku immediately asked what he meant. Principal Zhou explained that he had looked into Chen Du's background. Before arriving in High City, the boy had never once left Liang City. To the mayor, there was nothing odd about that. In the world of martial arts, talent is what matters. But the principal shook his head. The strangeness he referred to wasn't about talent, but the boy's fighting style. He added that Chen Du's flowing light sword art wasn't actually perfect yet. It hadn't reached the 99% Tier 1 mark, yet he was somehow able to predict his enemies' movements without even looking at them. To Principal Zhou, Chen Du's style resembled a warrior who had survived a war, someone who had lived through a brush with death. This kind of experience shouldn't belong to an ordinary student. Furthermore, the BB wolves were creatures from the spirit realm, a fact unknown to most. Initially, the principal thought Chen Du might have a connection to a high-level martial palace, but it turned out he was just a boy with no known lineage. Back at the fight, Chen Du was pushed back until his spine hit a massive tree. In front of him, the remaining BB wolves were positioned and ready to strike at any second. He wasted no time. Moving instantly, he executed breeze in the forest, unleashing a rapid succession of slashes. With every swing of his blade, a blue light flickered, appearing to cut through the very air. However, not all of his enemies were hit. One BB wolf managed to dodge and leapt high, attempting to strike from above. Chen Du raised his head. His eyes flashed a cold blue as he quickly assessed the threat. The strongest among them was at level 7, while the others ranged between 6 and 6.5. Though they weren't many, they were far more dangerous than the green firefly giant he had defeated before. He didn't hesitate. He charged again. He struck one BB wolf, then drove his sword into the tree to use as leverage. Using that support, he lunged forward, locking his focus onto his next target. In his mind, there was only one goal: he needed to achieve a breakthrough. He suddenly jumped, gliding swiftly over the monsters to find the ones waiting for an opening. He would take them out first. With a fast and precise motion, he instantly decapitated one of the wolves. But before he could recover, he sensed a strange movement nearby. Something was moving with incredible speed. That was when the reality of the situation set in. The constant dodging and fighting were rapidly draining his energy. His body felt heavy, and his movements were becoming slower than they were just moments ago. At that moment, his decision was clear: he had to end this fight immediately. Chendo moved with blistering speed, dodging the BB wolves' relentless assaults in rapid succession. But internally, he cursed. He could feel that his speed still wasn't enough to fully keep pace with them. Despite his evasions, a shallow gash opened on his arm. Before he could even recover from his retreat, the BB wolves lunged again. With no other choice, he met one of them head-on with a swift strike. But in that exact moment, another wolf vanished from his sight and reappeared behind him, tearing into his side. Chendo cursed again in his mind. Yet, one thing had become crystal clear: he had spotted their weakness. He was just a hair's breadth away. But before he could act, a powerful blow from a BB wolf slammed into his body. At that point, his frustration with himself reached a breaking point. He knew he was still lacking. He needed to make his blade faster, stronger, heavier. He had to achieve a breakthrough. In the heat of the struggle, memories flashed through his mind: the happy smiles of his family, the grueling hours of his training, and the unwavering trust teacher Ling Yun had placed in him. To him, this wasn't just a simple competition. This was the turning point of his life. He poured every ounce of his remaining strength into his resolve. His mouth nearly bled from the strain as he screamed internally that he could not lose here. His expression and aura shifted. A ferocious will to win completely enveloped his being. With a massive surge, he charged a BB wolf. But in that split second, he felt something strange in his movement. He couldn't quite explain it yet, but something had fundamentally changed. He hadn't even regained his footing when the BB wolves swarmed him from behind once more. One of them even managed to clamp its jaws onto his sword, attempting to pin his movements. In that moment, a heavy sense of regret crossed Chendo's mind. If only he hadn't been so trusting of others, perhaps he wouldn't have ended up in this desperate situation. It might be a hard lesson to learn before facing the real world, but for him, the price felt far too high. Meanwhile, not far away, teacher Ling Yun watched Chen do in silence. He sighed, thinking the result of the match was about to be decided and that it might be time to step in and end it. But suddenly, his expression shifted. He noticed a peculiar flow of energy circulating through Chen Du's entire body. Something was wrong, or more accurately, something extraordinary was happening. That sensation had originated from the very attack the boy had just executed. Only moments remained before he would be completely surrounded by two BB wolves. In a sudden blur, Chen Du swung his sword with such force it seemed to create a swirling vortex. He straightened his posture and, with one final, devastating swing, brought the blade down directly into the body of a BB wolf. He took a deep breath. That was when he finally realized the change. The movement of his sword followed the current of the wind with perfect precision. It was more natural, more fluid, and above all, far more powerful. He gripped his sword again and began to walk forward slowly. At that moment, a notification appeared. Congratulations to student Chen Du, your flowing light sword art has ascended from Tier 1, 98% to Tier 1, 99%. The scene shifted to the High City No. 1 High School auditorium, where the faces of those present were etched with profound shock. Principal Cao Yan couldn't believe that Chen Du had achieved such a breakthrough in the middle of a battle. Principal Li Mu was nearly speechless. Chen Du's level was now practically equal to that of their own teachers. Now, they were both at Tier 1, 99%. Even Principal Zhao couldn't hide his astonishment. Logically, even a medium-sized wolf den should be enough to exhaust and defeat a student at Tier 1, 99%. Yet, before their eyes, Chen Du seemed to be defying that very limit. Mayor Ku spoke softly while staring at the screen. To him, it seemed that Chendo's flowing light sword art was far more powerful than anyone had ever expected. For Mayor Ku, what Chen Du was demonstrating could no longer be considered the typical strength and speed of someone at Tier 1, 99%. There was something peculiar about the way he moved, as if he were transcending expected limits. Upon hearing this, Principal Zhao immediately shared his observations. In his view, what they were witnessing wasn't just a simple increase in martial arts rank. He suspected it had everything to do with a mental power attachment that had nearly reached level 10 in strength. Mayor Ku looked on, unable to hide his admiration. To him, Chen Du was truly remarkable and clearly possessed the potential to become a soaring martial artist in the future. However, Principal Zhao remained serious. He explained that possessing such immense mental power while still in the stage of a prospective martial artist was exceedingly rare. Once it reaches level 10, a qualitative change occurs, where the soul can transform into a martial soul. Nevertheless, it remained uncertain whether he could reach even higher levels, such as level 15, in the future. He added that achieving Tier 1, 100% in martial arts is one of the 3 primary conditions to becoming a soaring martial artist, a formidable barrier that is not easily overcome. Despite this, Mayor Ku laughed, remarking that Principal Zhao was perhaps being too strict. For him, Chen Du's current performance was more than enough to be called extraordinary. Meanwhile, back in the auditorium, the students suddenly erupted in shouts. They pointed at the large screen, questioning why the MI City team had shown up at that location, especially after the Liang City team had just saved them. One student noted that he had been watching the Liang City team's movements for a while. According to him, the MI City team was the one that gave them the directions. Hearing this, another student cursed as the realization hit. The Liang City team had been lured toward the wolf den, they had been deceived. At the scene, the girl Chen Du had rescued asked Zhang Shuai if he was certain they could successfully claim the Liang City team's badge. Zhang Shuai replied calmly, telling her not to worry. He claimed that no matter how strong Chen Du's group was, they couldn't possibly handle that many BB wolves. He was certain the Liang City team's leader would be forced to intervene to save the students, and once that happened, the entire team would be automatically eliminated. He further explained that, according to the rules, an eliminated team must leave their badge behind. Since the badges had no tracking system, no one would ever know who picked them up. With total confidence, he declared that since they were the only ones there, the 2 badges would undoubtedly be theirs. A moment later, with a smirk, he told his teammates that they had finally reached their goal. Upon arrival, they were greeted by the sight of countless BB wolf carcasses. One of his teammates was awestruck, praising Zhang Shuai as a master tactician, almost god-like in his predictions. But suddenly, Zhang Shuai froze. Something was wrong. He couldn't explain it, but a strange sensation washed over him. It felt as if he had overlooked something critical. One of his teammates pointed toward a badge resting atop a pile of monster corpses. As he approached it, the girl commented on how impressive the Liang City team's teacher must be to have slaughtered all those BB wolves. Zhang Shuai remained silent. In his mind, it was clear a fierce battle had taken place. But as he scanned the surroundings, the feeling that he had missed a vital detail intensified. Cold sweat began to break on his brow. Panic set in. In the next second, he screamed at his teammates to run immediately. In his mind, the Liang City team hadn't been eliminated yet, and that badge was a trap. One teammate didn't believe him, wondering how that was possible given that all the BB wolves were dead. To him, it was impossible for a student like Chen Du to have killed them all. But before he could finish his sentence, a burst of blue energy struck his hand, forcing him back before he could touch the badge. They all turned around at once. From the shadows, Chen Du slowly walked toward them. His presence was quiet yet incredibly heavy. In a calm voice, he revealed the truth. He had killed every single BB wolf by himself. As he drew closer, he seriously asked Zhang Shuai how he had figured out they hadn't been eliminated. Slightly trembling, Zhang Shuai answered. He explained that he had examined the wounds on the BB wolves. He knew that team leaders were forbidden from carrying weapons, making it impossible for an unarmed leader to leave those kinds of deep slashes on the monsters' bodies. Chen Du suddenly recalled that teacher Ling Yun only ever used a rotating variety of weapons whenever they sparred in martial arts class. Even now, he had no idea what the teacher's primary weapon actually was, and he realized with a start that he had completely overlooked that crucial detail. This realization forced him to conclude that he needed to be far more cautious from this point forward. Gripping the badge, Chen Du repeated his demand to know Wu Zhang's whereabouts. He then tossed the badge onto the muddy ground and coldly stated that he had absolutely no interest in such trinkets. His only goal was to find and fight Wu Zhang. Watching the badge lay forgotten in the dirt, one of the other students finally grasped Chen Du's true intentions. It became clear to him that the only reason Chen Du had even entered the 100-city hegemony tournament was to hunt down Wu Zhang. Zhang Shuai pulled out a map with an irritated huff. He pointed to a section and explained that they had spotted Wu Zhang earlier heading in the opposite direction. His target was the star mark located behind them, but they had been intercepted by a pack of BB wolves along the way. As he studied the map, Chen Du processed Zhang Shuai's information. If they had encountered wolves in the middle of the path, it meant there was a significant flaw in the straight-line navigation provided by the officials. Zhang Shuai added that Wu Zhang had likely moved from his previous spot, though he was undoubtedly still lingering near the star mark. Without another word, Chen Du moved with blinding speed. He struck the back of the students' necks one by one, rendering them unconscious while telling them to leave their badges behind and exit the trial. Before Zhang Shuai drifted into unconsciousness, he cursed bitterly in his mind, unable to utter a single word. Chen Du looked down at the fallen group in silence before coldly remarking that he was only doing them a favor in exchange for the directions they had provided earlier. Suddenly, the teacher of the three students emerged from the shadows. He glared at Chen Du, calling him a talented but unprincipled fighter who went back on his word and possessed no martial ethics whatsoever. Hearing this from his hiding spot in the tall grass, Moritz's ears began to ring with anger. Though he tried to restrain himself, he eventually shouted back at the teacher, demanding to know what he meant by accusing them of having no ethics. In that moment, Chen Du realized that this man was the team leader of the MI City team, which meant they had nothing to fear. He coldly pointed out that what their team had done was a clear case of deception. As the moments passed, the full weight of the situation finally dawned on Moritz. He realized they had been set up because they held the martial character badge. In Moritz's mind, it was obvious that the MI City team's goal was to hoard both badges through underhanded means. Lu Bo understood the situation as well. They had been targeted by the enemy specifically so that every single badge could be stripped away from them. Amidst the lingering tension, Moritz asked if Chen Du still intended to challenge Wu Zhang in his current state. Chen Du fell silent for a moment as he stared intensely at the map. When Moritz pressed him again for an answer, Chen Du finally spoke. He admitted that he was calling off the hunt for now. His stamina was depleted and his mental focus was fading. He knew he was in no condition to face Wu Zhang, who was a top-tier, Tier 1 perfect expert. Even fighting someone at 89% of Tier 1 had pushed him to his limits. However, he had managed to confirm Wu Zhang's general location, and that was enough for him. His original plan was to avoid perfect-level experts entirely, but he never expected their luck to be so good that they would end up collecting every single badge. Pointing toward their next destination, Chen Du declared that they were heading straight to Moon Park to submit their badges and finish the first round of the competition. He traced the route they would follow with his hand. Moritz and Lu Bo exchanged confused glances and asked why they had to take that specific path. Chen Du explained that they needed to take a detour because he had sensed something off from the very beginning. To him, the rules for obtaining the badges seemed far too simple. While the organizers had claimed the badge locations were safe, he suspected there was a hidden deception behind it all. He also brought up the directions Zhang Shuai had given regarding Wu Zhang. When Zhang Shuai mentioned the word, midway, Chen Du asked his teammates if that didn't strike them as suspicious. It was then that Lu Bo finally caught on to Chen Du's line of reasoning. Moritz added that the true challenge of securing a badge wasn't the destination itself, but the perilous journey required to get there. Chen Du further explained that the entire forest wolf woods seemed intentionally designed to disorient participants, especially those trying to avoid the wolf dens. Taking the route closer to the 2-star marks was the most reliable path, but it was also the most dangerous because it significantly increased the odds of running into rival teams. For Chen Du, it was clear that this was a meticulously crafted competition. Any team lacking sufficient strength, unless they were incredibly lucky, would never reach the moon mark even if they managed to snag 2 badges. He warned them that until the assessment was officially over, they couldn't afford to relax. Moritz and Lu Bo finally understood the gravity of their situation. However, they suddenly flinched and retreated when something stirred in the tall grass. A figure slowly emerged, and as Chen Du braced himself, he cursed inwardly at the sight before them. They had just crossed paths with the High City team, which featured one of the 2 perfect-level experts. Chen Du realized that just as they were nearing the finish line, they had plummeted into an even more lethal scenario. Ku Zongtian came to a halt in front of them. In that moment, Chen Du sensed not only a powerful sword intent but also that this man could feel his own strength. There was no doubt, this was the Tier 1 perfect expert, Ku Zongtian. Ku Zongtian dropped a large crate, and from it, 6 swords emerged. Chen Du's group immediately braced for a fight. But just as tensions peaked, a voice rang out, commanding Ku Zongtian to stop. It was Zhou Xiaogu. She pointed out that based on the blood coating the group, they had clearly just finished a grueling battle against BB wolves. She argued that if they fought now, a victory wouldn't be fair or honorable. Zhou Xiaogu smiled as she looked at Chen Du. She remarked that she hadn't expected to find another Tier 1 perfect expert besides Wu Zhang. However, she confidently stated that whether it was Chen Du or Wu Zhang, she intended to defeat them both in the next 2 rounds of the competition. She boasted that their High City team had been champions for 9 consecutive years, and no one would stop them from claiming their 10th straight title. With that, the two began to walk away. As they departed, Lu Bo commented on Zhou Xiaogu's behavior, noting that he hadn't expected her to have the noble spirit of a great hero. When Chen Du heard this, his expression shifted. In his mind, he couldn't reconcile Lu Bo's description with the Zhou Xiaogu he knew. To him, the woman who seemed more like someone selling dangerous contraband was a far cry from a great hero. In fact, he found the comparison almost laughable. Meanwhile, as the two walked further away, Ku Zongtian questioned Zhou Xiaogu. He admitted he was surprised to hear her talk about a dishonorable win. To him, exploiting an enemy's weakness to finish them off was a legitimate combat strategy, a way to ensure the opponent had no room to breathe. He knew that ruthless efficiency was Zhou Xiaogu's true style. Zhou Xiaogu's cheeks flushed slightly as she replied that they were currently on a live broadcast, and she had to maintain a good public image. Later that night, following the first round of the badge snatch battle, Chen Du returned to his hotel. He sighed with relief as he fell onto his bed. His body was heavy with exhaustion after another day of intense training, refining his mental power through the Boy emotion visualization method. Currently, 50 teams, totaling 150 students, had passed the first round. He calculated that he would need to defeat approximately 4 opponents the next day to advance to the third round. His mental power was currently at level 9. He believed that as long as he could eliminate every monster in the 7th wave, he would reach level 10. He knew that once his mental power hit level 10, it would undergo a qualitative transformation. As he slowly closed his eyes, one final thought lingered: if he could reach that level, he would become the undisputed number 1 in the entire competition. As soon as Chendo closed his eyes, his consciousness shifted into the mysterious crystal space. Inside this dimension, he could feel the ground beneath him trembling, a clear warning that the 7th wave of monsters was closing in. Before long, massive creatures stepped out of the darkness, gripping heavy weapons. He realized then that the 7th wave had officially begun, and he couldn't help but notice the bizarre, terrifying design of the blades they carried. A notification flashed in his mind, identifying these monsters as two-faced three-knife bears, with a dangerous life intensity at level 7. Without wasting a second, one of the bears lunged at Chendo with full force. He quickly blocked the strike with his sword, but the sheer impact sent a shock through his arms. He realized immediately that this creature was a powerhouse of brute force, prompting him to change his tactics and look for a different angle of attack. He leapt high into the air to dodge and find an opening for a counterattack, but he was startled to find that the bear actually had a second set of eyes on the back of its head, staring right at him while he was midair. He felt a chill of unease, finally understanding why they were called two-faced. Before he could make his next move, the monster followed up, trying to strike him while he was still airborne and vulnerable, but Chendo's agility saved him as he dodged again and landed firmly on his feet. As he caught his breath, his goal became crystal clear. He knew that if he wanted to perform well in the competition the next day, he had to take down every single one of these monsters tonight to boost his experience and strength. He moved again, charging at his opponent in a blur. He started by aiming for its neck, but he noticed the bear didn't even bother to protect that area, a sign that it wasn't a weak point. He tried for the head next, but that seemed to have no effect either. He picked up on a strange pattern. The monster was focused entirely on offense and seemed to have zero concern for its own defense. He figured that if it fought like that, its heart probably wasn't the source of its life force, either. Chendo tried striking various parts of the giant bear's body, but no matter how hard he swung, he couldn't bring it down. While he was frantically thinking of a new plan, another bear charged him from behind without warning. He parried the blow instantly, and in that split second of close contact, he noticed something odd. The creature's tail seemed to be moving unnaturally, as if it were instinctively flinching and trying to stay protected at all costs. There it was, the answer he needed. The tail was their true weakness. To test his theory, Chendo made his move. He decided to intentionally leave a gap in his defense, pretending to go for a direct killing blow on the monster's head. As he executed the plan, he raised his sword high as if to end the bear's life in one swing. But at the exact moment of impact, he pivoted his blade and brought it crashing down, aiming straight for the hidden tail. The monster's face twisted in pure shock, but it was too late. With one clean, swift stroke, Chendo severed the tail. The massive creature collapsed instantly, lifeless. His theory was confirmed. With a confident, slightly taunting smirk, Chendo told himself that they'd just have to see how much longer the rest of these bears could keep their tails hidden from his blade tonight. Meanwhile, the scene shifted back to the world outside the crystal space. Zhou Xiaogu asked Teacher Zhang with a hint of curiosity why they had been called in so suddenly. Teacher Zhang replied in a serious tone, asking if they remembered the team from Liang City they had faced earlier in the competition. Zhou Xiaogu nodded immediately. Yeah, I remember, she said. The team with that Tier 1 perfect expert. Inside a private room, Teacher Zhang shared some critical news with a heavy tone. He revealed that the student from Liang City was named Chendo, and according to the latest intelligence, this young man was likely the biggest obstacle standing between them and the championship. Teacher Zhang emphasized that even though Chendo came from a small city, he was not to be underestimated. On his own, Chendo had managed to clear out a medium-sized wolf den, a feat that normally requires an entire squad. The news caught Zhou Xiaogu completely off guard. She immediately asked if the report was accurate and if Chendo's strength had already reached the limit of Tier 1. Teacher Zhang explained that while he might not have hit the absolute peak of that level yet, Chendo's understanding of martial arts had clearly reached the stage of comprehension by analogy. However, they still weren't certain if he had advanced to the form or intent levels. Ku Zongtian looked concerned as he processed the details, noting that if the report was true, Chendo was already on par with Zhou Xiaogu's current martial arts state. Teacher Zhang reminded everyone that the reason for this meeting was to issue a stern warning. No matter who they faced, whether it was Chendo, Wu Zhang, or anyone else, they had to stay sharp and never succumb to overconfidence. He then looked directly at Zhou Xiaogu and asked how confident she felt if she had to face Chendo in the arena. Without a moment of hesitation, Zhou Xiaogu stood her ground. She boldly reaffirmed her earlier claim that High City's 10th consecutive championship was secure, and they would definitely bring home the trophy. The next day, the atmosphere at the tournament reached a fever pitch. In a large hall, the bulletin board displayed the official rules for round 2. A presiding teacher explained that this round would shift to a 1v1 format. There was a life intensity cap set at level 5, and the system was designed to ensure that teammates would not be pitted against each other in the early stages. The screen then displayed the brutal elimination process. The initial 150 participants would fight until only 75 remained. Those winners would face off until 38 were left, and the numbers would continue to dwindle to 19. From that elite group of 19, the real battle for the prestigious top 10 would begin. After 4 consecutive elimination rounds, the final 10 survivors would advance to the finals the following day. The teacher added that an automated system would determine the match order. Participants who finished their matches quickly would be cycled into the next round sooner, while those in longer bouts would be given guaranteed time by the system to rest and recover. He also noted that the numbers currently assigned to them were simply based on yesterday's performance rankings and held no further significance. Chendo looked at his number, 16, and did some quick math. He realized this meant his team had ranked 4th among those who passed the previous day. Moments later, the automated system began selecting the very first pair of fighters. The entire room went silent as everyone held their breath, eyes glued to the screen. When the results finally flashed, several spectators couldn't help but curse in disbelief. The very first match was an absolute blockbuster, a rare encounter that seemed like a miracle to see so early in the brackets. It was perfect versus perfect. The screen lit up with the names of the 2 giants set to clash immediately. High City's star player, Zhou Xiaogu, against Lu City's powerhouse, Wu Zhang. The arena hummed with the sound of thousands of students whispering, debating whether this opening match would effectively decide the entire championship. However, many were quick to disagree. They reminded the crowd not to forget Chen Du's legendary feat of clearing a medium-sized wolf den solo, or the presence of the enigmatic Ku Zongtian, who had yet to show his true potential since the start of the tournament. Chen Du listened to the chatter in silence, his eyes fixed on the stage. He felt a genuine surge of interest in the clash between Zhou Xiaogu and Wu Zhang. The air felt heavy with tension. He knew both fighters possessed a level of power that far exceeded the average student. Before the fight officially began, an announcement rang out. both contestants' life intensity had been temporarily capped at level 5 to ensure a fair, skill-based duel. When the two finally stood face to face, Wu Zhang was the first to speak. With a cocky grin, he told Zhou Xiaogu he had been waiting a long time to face her in a real fight. Zhou Xiaogu smiled back, playfully suggesting he could always visit High City No. 1 High School if he wanted a rematch in the future. But Wu Zhang's expression suddenly hardened. He leveled his weapon at her, declaring that he wanted to fight the version of Zhou Xiaogu who carried the weight of 10 consecutive championships. He challenged her to show the legendary strength people claimed was unmatched in their generation, as he wouldn't believe the hype until he felt it himself. Then believe what you've heard, Zhou Xiaogu replied calmly. In an instant, they both moved like bolts of lightning colliding in the center. The screech of clashing metal echoed through the stadium before they both leapt back to reset. Both were sitting at Tier 1, 90%. The audience watched in awe as real-time data began to flash across the screens, displaying their martial arts index. When a confused student asked how the system calculated their power so accurately, another explained that their protective suits were embedded with special force sensing chips. These chips automatically calculated their combat level based on the force and precision exerted during the fight. Wu Zhang charged again with even more ferocity. He swung his sword, sending a blue crescent of energy toward Zhou Xiaogu, which she narrowly avoided with a blur of motion. On the screen, Wu Zhang's index climbed to 92%. Before Zhou Xiaogu could even regain her footing, Wu Zhang was already on top of her for a follow-up strike. Forced to maneuver while still midair, Zhou Xiaogu stayed composed. Wu Zhang realized she wasn't panicking despite being out of position. Instead, she remained alert, waiting for the perfect window to strike back. Wu Zhang delivered a sharp kick toward her weapon, trying to pin her hands, but Zhou Xiaogu sensed the follow-up coming. A powerful kick landed squarely on her stomach, sliding her across the floor. Despite the impact, her gaze remained sharp and focused on Wu Zhang. He didn't give her a second to breathe. While she was still recovering from the slide, Wu Zhang unleashed a devastating flurry of sword strikes. The screen flashed a warning as Wu Zhang's martial arts index surged to a staggering 99%. Realizing that Wu Zhang's sword intent was too powerful to block head-on, Zhou Xiaogu used her dagger to deftly deflect the path of his massive blade. This precise counter move pushed her own index up to 95%. In the chaotic exchange of power, Zhou Xiaogu managed to land a clean hit, opening a bleeding gash on Wu Zhang's arm. Instead of flinching, Wu Zhang let out a grin. He praised her tactical brilliance, acknowledging how she intentionally diverted his attack just to find a single opening in his defense. For Wu Zhang, the wound on his shoulder was more than a mere injury, it was the ultimate proof that the strength he had been searching for was standing right in front of him. Chendo, meanwhile, watched the arena with growing confusion. To him, the duel felt shrouded in mystery because he couldn't pinpoint the basic martial arts behind their movements. Despite his sharp eyes, there was something hidden in every swing and kick that he simply couldn't name. On the stage, Zhou Xiaogu's brow furrowed as she felt the pressure mounting. She coldly remarked that their real fight was only beginning before lunging at Wu Zhang, her dagger glowing with a fierce violet light. She followed up with a strike so fast it nearly caught him off guard, but Wu Zhang's instincts saved him. From that moment on, the arena became a stage for a dizzying, relentless exchange of blows that showed no sign of slowing down. At the edge of the crowd, Teacher Ling approached Chendo to share some high-level insight. He reminded the young man that since his martial arts level hadn't reached Tier 1, 99% earlier, he hadn't yet explained the significance of that final 1%. Curious, Chendo asked about the secret of that last stage. Teacher Ling replied with a cryptic question, asking if Chendo really thought that 100% came immediately after 99%. It was then that Chendo realized reaching the peak wasn't one giant leap, but a series of intricate micro-levels, like 99.1%, before achieving perfection. Teacher Ling explained that this final stage is known as comprehension by analogy. He pointed out that Zhou Xiaogu's dagger no longer behaved like a dagger, and Wu Zhang's sword didn't move like a standard sword. This skill allows a fighter to mimic the techniques of one weapon using another. This is exactly why ordinary spectators find it impossible to track the origin of their movements. Chendo watched Wu Zhang again, deep in thought. Suddenly, it clicked. Wu Zhang was using the clock hammer technique, but he was executing its second form, the chaotic clock hammer, with a sword. Wu Zhang was utilizing the blade's flexibility to replicate the crushing weight and ferocity of a giant hammer. This, form shifting, was the first step. The next stage was intent, where the original basic martial arts would vanish completely, leaving an opponent totally bewildered. Turning his gaze to Zhou Xiaogu, Chen Du was even more impressed. The high city star was basing her movements on her own basic art, the Holy Knight Staff technique, but she was channeling it entirely through a single dagger. In the heat of the clash, Wu Zhang launched an attack from the clock hammer technique called Guian Tears. But before the dangerous swing could connect with her head, Zhou Xiaogu coldly told him he was too late, she had already read the move. She leveled her dagger and warned him that a sword could never truly replicate every quality of a different weapon. Wu Zhang was briefly impressed when she managed to catch the momentum of his blade using only her fingers. However, he wasn't finished. He announced he was moving to the third form, the three hammers of bitter winter. He unleashed a devastating, sweeping strike that seemed to vibrate through the entire arena floor. Amidst the raging assault, Zhou Xiaogu spotted a tiny gap in Wu Zhang's defense. She lunged for the opening, but her heart sank when Wu Zhang blocked her with a single hand. "You fell for it," he said coldly. Zhou Xiaogu's eyes widened as she realized his sword was already positioned for a final, crushing blow. At that exact moment, the screen flared to life, showing Wu Zhang's martial arts index hitting a terrifying 99.9%. The crowd erupted in screams. This was the quasi-limit, a state that practically brushes against the ceiling of power. In the next second, Wu Zhang brought his full force down. A massive explosion of blue energy swallowed the stage, leaving everyone breathless as they waited to see who would still be standing when the smoke cleared.
The chapter ends here. Watch out for our upcoming uploads. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll always be updated on our future videos.
The arena hummed with the sound of thousands of students whispering, debating whether this opening match would effectively decide the entire championship. However, many were quick to disagree. They reminded the crowd not to forget Chen Du's legendary feat of clearing a medium-sized wolf den solo, or the presence of the enigmatic Ku Zongtian, who had yet to show his true potential since the start of the tournament. Chen Du listened to the chatter in silence, his eyes fixed on the stage. He felt a genuine surge of interest in the clash between Zhou Xiaogu and Wu Zhang. The air felt heavy with tension. He knew both fighters possessed a level of power that far exceeded the average student. Before the fight officially began, an announcement rang out. Both contestants' life intensity had been temporarily capped at level 5 to ensure a fair, skill-based duel. When the two finally stood face to face, Wu Zhang was the first to speak. With a cocky grin, he told Zhou Xiaogu he had been waiting a long time to face her in a real fight. Zhou Xiaogu smiled back, playfully suggesting he could always visit High City No. 1 High School if he wanted a rematch in the future. But Wu Zhang's expression suddenly hardened. He leveled his weapon at her, declaring that he wanted to fight the version of Zhou Xiaogu who carried the weight of 10 consecutive championships. He challenged her to show the legendary strength people claimed was unmatched in their generation, as he wouldn't believe the hype until he felt it himself. "Then believe what you've heard," Zhou Xiaogu replied calmly. In an instant, they both moved like bolts of lightning colliding in the center. The screech of clashing metal echoed through the stadium before they both leapt back to reset. Both were sitting at Tier 1, 90%. The audience watched in awe as real-time data began to flash across the screens, displaying their martial arts index. When a confused student asked how the system calculated their power so accurately, another explained that their protective suits were embedded with special force sensing chips. These chips automatically calculated their combat level based on the force and precision exerted during the fight. Wu Zhang charged again with even more ferocity. He swung his sword, sending a blue crescent of energy toward Zhou Xiaogu, which she narrowly avoided with a blur of motion. On the screen, Wu Zhang's index climbed to 92%. Before Zhou Xiaogu could even regain her footing, Wu Zhang was already on top of her for a follow-up strike. Forced to maneuver while still midair, Zhou Xiaogu stayed composed. Wu Zhang realized she wasn't panicking despite being out of position. Instead, she remained alert, waiting for the perfect window to strike back. Wu Zhang delivered a sharp kick toward her weapon, trying to pin her hands, but Zhou Xiaogu sensed the follow-up coming. A powerful kick landed squarely on her stomach, sliding her across the floor. Despite the impact, her gaze remained sharp and focused on Wu Zhang. He didn't give her a second to breathe. While she was still recovering from the slide, Wu Zhang unleashed a devastating flurry of sword strikes. The screen flashed a warning as Wu Zhang's martial arts index surged to a staggering 99%. Realizing that Wu Zhang's sword intent was too powerful to block head-on, Zhou Xiaogu used her dagger to deftly deflect the path of his massive blade. This precise counter move pushed her own index up to 95%. In the chaotic exchange of power, Zhou Xiaogu managed to land a clean hit, opening a bleeding gash on Wu Zhang's arm. Instead of flinching, Wu Zhang let out a grin. He praised her tactical brilliance, acknowledging how she intentionally diverted his attack just to find a single opening in his defense. For Wu Zhang, the wound on his shoulder was more than a mere injury, it was the ultimate proof that the strength he had been searching for was standing right in front of him. Chen Du, meanwhile, watched the arena with growing confusion. To him, the duel felt shrouded in mystery because he couldn't pinpoint the basic martial arts behind their movements. Despite his sharp eyes, there was something hidden in every swing and kick that he simply couldn't name. On the stage, Zhou Xiaogu's brow furrowed as she felt the pressure mounting. She coldly remarked that their real fight was only beginning before lunging at Wu Zhang, her dagger glowing with a fierce violet light. She followed up with a strike so fast it nearly caught him off guard, but Wu Zhang's instincts saved him. From that moment on, the arena became a stage for a dizzying, relentless exchange of blows that showed no sign of slowing down. At the edge of the crowd, Teacher Ling approached Chen Du to share some high-level insight. He reminded the young man that since his martial arts level hadn't reached Tier 1, 99% earlier, he hadn't yet explained the significance of that final 1%. Curious, Chen Du asked about the secret of that last stage. Teacher Ling replied with a cryptic question, asking if Chen Du really thought that 100% came immediately after 99%. It was then that Chen Du realized reaching the peak wasn't one giant leap, but a series of intricate micro-levels, like 99.1%, before achieving perfection. Teacher Ling explained that this final stage is known as comprehension by analogy. He pointed out that Zhou Xiaogu's dagger no longer behaved like a dagger, and Wu Zhang's sword didn't move like a standard sword. This skill allows a fighter to mimic the techniques of one weapon using another. This is exactly why ordinary spectators find it impossible to track the origin of their movements. Chen Du watched Wu Zhang again, deep in thought. Suddenly, it clicked. Wu Zhang was using the clock hammer technique, but he was executing its second form, the chaotic clock hammer, with a sword. Wu Zhang was utilizing the blade's flexibility to replicate the crushing weight and ferocity of a giant hammer. This, form shifting, was the first step. The next stage was intent, where the original basic martial arts would vanish completely, leaving an opponent totally bewildered. Turning his gaze to Zhou Xiaogu, Chen Du was even more impressed. The high city star was basing her movements on her own basic art, the Holy Knight Staff technique, but she was channeling it entirely through a single dagger. In the heat of the clash, Wu Zhang launched an attack from the clock hammer technique called Guian Tears. But before the dangerous swing could connect with her head, Zhou Xiaogu coldly told him he was too late, she had already read the move. She leveled her dagger and warned him that a sword could never truly replicate every quality of a different weapon. Wu Zhang was briefly impressed when she managed to catch the momentum of his blade using only her fingers. However, he wasn't finished. He announced he was moving to the third form, the three hammers of bitter winter. He unleashed a devastating, sweeping strike that seemed to vibrate through the entire arena floor. Amidst the raging assault, Zhou Xiaogu spotted a tiny gap in Wu Zhang's defense. She lunged for the opening, but her heart sank when Wu Zhang blocked her with a single hand. "You fell for it," he said coldly. Zhou Xiaogu's eyes widened as she realized his sword was already positioned for a final, crushing blow. At that exact moment, the screen flared to life, showing Wu Zhang's martial arts index hitting a terrifying 99.9%. The crowd erupted in screams. This was the quasi-limit, a state that practically brushes against the ceiling of power. In the next second, Wu Zhang brought his full force down. A massive explosion of blue energy swallowed the stage, leaving everyone breathless as they waited to see who would still be standing when the smoke cleared. After the clash, as the smoke in the center of the arena slowly began to clear, the spectators suddenly screamed in shock when they noticed that someone was still standing in the middle of the battlefield. Nobody could believe what they were seeing, and the audience immediately began asking whether Zhou Xiaogu had finally been defeated. A few moments before Hu Zhang's final attack landed, he had shouted that Zhou Xiaogu's title as the unmatched genius would now belong to him. At that exact moment, Chen Du sensed the overwhelming aura radiating from Hu Zhang and immediately realized something. With his current level of strength, it was fortunate that the two of them had not faced each other yesterday. However, in the middle of the dust and smoke, Zhou Xiaogu suddenly broke free from Wang's restraint using his dagger. Immediately afterward, he unleashed the Holy Knight Staff technique, fourth stage, Drown of the Thousand-Man Army. He rapidly swung his dagger through the air, and from it burst an overwhelming blue energy that continuously expanded until it resembled a gigantic tidal wave surrounding his entire body. At the same time, the screen displayed that his martial arts level had officially reached Tier 1 limit, 100%. The students instantly jumped to their feet and shouted in disbelief at what they had witnessed. The Tier 1 limit was one of the 3 great barriers required to become a soaring martial artist. And at only 17 years old, Joe Shago had already reached it. The last person who had accomplished such a feat before becoming famous was Wawa Torres, the principal of one of the top 8 elite schools. Facing that overwhelming power, Huzang violently slammed his sword into the ground and declared that Joe Shago was the winner. At the side of the arena, Chendo felt disappointed by the outcome of the battle. In his opinion, once fighters had already reached this kind of level, shouldn't they continue until the very limit of combat so that others could at least learn something valuable from the clash? Meanwhile, Mayor Ku spoke to Principal Joe and remarked that this explained why he had mentioned earlier the existence of 3 perfect-level martial artists. It turned out that his son had already reached the limit level and had been hiding his true strength the entire time. Principal Joe calmly explained that his son had only broken through last week. Even their own team leader had not known about it yet. As the ace player representing the city in the championship, revealing that strength too early would have affected the fighting spirit of the other competitors. Mayor Ku agreed and commented that fighting spirit was extremely important for the development of young students. Elsewhere, a man wearing a hat remarked that Joe Shago's performance had truly been impressive. Another man agreed but added that Joe Shago's father was a 3-star deacon of the Extreme Martial Palace. Because of that, there was a very high chance that Joe Shago would eventually choose Black Dragon Martial Arts University. The man with the hat added that Wu Zhang's performance had also been excellent, but it was unfortunate because he had already been accepted through special early admission into Chongfeng Martial Arts University. His companion sighed and remarked that their Kilin Martial Arts University seemed to be falling behind, and now they could only hope that more outstanding talents would appear in the upcoming matches. Meanwhile, Chendo sat quietly while watching the next series of battles with visible disappointment on his face. The matches were so unexciting compared to the previous fight that even the person beside him was almost falling asleep. That person even commented that after witnessing the battle between Joe Shago and Wu Zhang, it was impossible to enjoy watching ordinary rookie-level fights anymore. Not long afterward, the screen displayed the next match announcement. From Liang City Team, Chendo versus Wang City Team, Jia Darren. The audience instantly erupted into loud cheers while pointing toward the screen. In their eyes, Chendo was the student who had single-handedly invaded the Wolf Den. At last, they finally had another thrilling battle to look forward to. Chendo slowly rose from his seat. Standing before him was Jia Darren. In Chendo's mind, this was the number 2 ranked fighter, the participant with the second highest combat power among the group that had completed all of yesterday's batches first. To him, the tournament had suddenly become even more interesting. The moment both of them stepped onto the stage, Jia Darren spoke first. He admitted that he had never expected Joe Shago and Wang to be that overwhelmingly powerful, so his only goal now was simply to enter the top 10 rankings. Chendo became slightly confused by those words. To him, Jia Darren sounded far too confident in himself. However, Jia Darren smiled and said that he had already heard about Chendo's feat of single-handedly attacking the Wolf Den yesterday. According to him, that accomplishment was truly impressive. But then Jia Darren suddenly asked Chendo one question. Compared to yesterday, exactly how strong was Chendo's current condition now? Chendo did not answer at all and immediately moved into attack. Their weapons collided violently, and the sharp vibration of steel echoed throughout the entire arena. The screen displayed Chendo's martial arts level at Tier 1 with 99%, while Jia Darren's martial arts level had also reached the same realm. The audience could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Another hidden perfect level expert had appeared. With a smile on his face, Jia Darren remarked that it seemed Chendo wanted to finish the battle immediately. He even asked whether Chendo was afraid and if his stamina had already begun running out. Right after that, he activated the Invisible Edge Muramasa Blade technique, first stance. Instantly, his martial arts index rose even higher. He rapidly charged forward and unleashed a powerful punch while simultaneously swinging his sword directly toward Chendo. The force of the attack pushed Chendo backward, causing him to silently analyze the technique in his mind. This was a strength-type Muramasa blade technique supported by the user's left hand, but its weakness was obvious. It lacked flexibility. In Chendo's eyes, Jia Darren clearly believed that he had already been injured yesterday and intended to exhaust him through a prolonged battle. Jia Darren prepared another attack and gathered a rose-colored energy around his sword. However, Chendo remained completely unfazed. He instantly moved forward while thinking that if not for the healing ability of the crystal space, his opponent's strategy might have already succeeded. Even so, he knew he needed to end the fight quickly. Jia Darren was shocked by the sudden increase in Chendo's speed. He frowned while realizing that Chendo was openly using a frost-type martial art and seemed intent on crushing him head-on. In Jia Darren's opinion, he should not be underestimated. Because of this, he immediately unleashed the Muramasa blade technique, 4th stance, Crescent Moon Sky Piercer. He rapidly swung his sword and released a massive rose-colored energy slash that split through the air itself. But Chendo directly met the attack using the flowing light sword art, 2nd stance, golden drums ringing to the heaven. His sword released a brilliant blue energy, and when the two attacks collided, an explosive impact thundered across the entire arena. On the screen, Chendo's martial arts index rose to 99.3%. The sheer force of his strike blasted Jia Darren's sword away and even tore open the palm of his hand. Jia Darren could not believe what had just happened. At that moment, he finally understood Chendo's true strength. Before he could even recover, Chendo immediately used painting the ground as a prison. The moment Jia Darren crashed onto the stage, Chendo calmly asked him whether he still believed he could enter the top 10 after facing him. Jia Darren could no longer answer. Because of that, Chendo quietly let out a breath while thinking to himself that this opponent had been far stronger than expected. He realized that for now, he still needed to avoid monsters of this level whenever possible. At the side of the arena, the audience whispered among themselves in amazement. They were stunned by how quickly the battle had ended. In their eyes, Chendo's martial arts mastery had already reached 99.3%, and they assumed this was probably due to his exceptionally high mental power. However, the man wearing a hat responded to the person beside him. According to him, it seemed that the others had not watched yesterday's matches. Chendo's mental power was actually not that high. It was only barely at the passing line. The man beside him became shocked and asked whether that was really only considered the passing line. If Chendo possessed level 10 mental power, then his soul could evolve into a true martial soul. The man with the hat explained that before reaching life intensity level 11 and entering what they called the killing class, the requirements were either level 10 mental power or reaching the tier 1 limit in martial arts. Achieving even one of those conditions was already enough. He continued by saying that the reason they were watching this competition was to search for geniuses who surpassed ordinary geniuses. There was no need to mention life intensity anymore, but Chendo's mental power and martial arts still lacked just a little bit. Even so, another man commented that compared to Jia Darren, Chendo could still be considered an outstanding talent who had already surpassed the passing line. He even suggested that they speak with Chendo later and see whether it was possible to convince him to sign a letter of intent. Meanwhile, Chendo quietly walked down from the stage, carrying both the weight of his victory and the pressure of the next challenge waiting ahead of him. Once the matches concluded, the spectators began filtering out, heading back to their respective hotels. One man remarked with relief that the second round of the competition was finally over, though his female companion countered that the conclusion only made her more excited for tomorrow's finals. Meanwhile, back in the quiet of his room, Chendo let out a long sigh of relief. He reflected on how he had strategically used the match duration rules to his advantage, intentionally avoiding Zhou Xiaogu throughout all 4 rounds to secure his advancement. Shortly after, he closed his eyes and drifted back into the crystal realm. He felt that the intensity of real combat was the key to pushing his limits, and while he had fallen short the previous night, he was now confident he could wipe out the bears. Inside the realm, he took the bears down one by one, a small smile forming on his face as the battle progressed. Finally, a system announcement confirmed that his life intensity had risen from 5.8 to 5.9. He clenched his fist in triumph, realizing his intuition was right. The grueling encounters with the baby wolves and his 4 recent matches had paid off. As the bears fell, a giant mantis monster suddenly emerged from the cold mist. Instead of being intimidated, Chendo smiled, eager to test his newfound strength against this new foe. However, before he could engage, the sharp ring of his phone pulled him back to reality. It was a message from Teacher Ling. He hurried to Teacher Ling Yun's room and asked immediately if something was wrong. His teacher beckoned him to sit and introduced him to 2 guests, Teacher Yu and Teacher Peng, representatives from the Special Admission Office of Keelin Martial Arts University. Chendo was stunned, knowing that Keelin stood as one of the top 3 institutions in the world, rivaled only by Black Dragon and Tianfeng. Teacher Yu explained that they were responsible for recruiting students for the elite Keelin class and identifying those with the potential to get there. Teacher Peng added that the Keelin class receives the lion's share of the university's resources to mold the strongest soaring martial artists. Humbled, Chendo admitted he hadn't met their requirements yet, questioning the significance of reaching the Tier 1 limit and a life intensity of 11 before the age of 18. Teacher Ling Yun took over with a serious expression, realizing Chendo hadn't been told about the secret treasures. He explained that when a person becomes a martial artist, a secret treasure opens within the body to absorb stellar energy, which boosts mental power. However, if a student hits the Tier 1 limit and level 11 intensity before turning 18, 2 treasures open simultaneously. If they possess exceptionally high levels of both martial skill and mental power, they might even unlock 3. There are 10 secret treasures in total, functioning like passive skills that provide unique enhancements. The more one unlocks, the greater their advantage. The weight of the situation finally dawned on Chendo. Teacher Yu noted that possessing 2 treasures marks one as a genius, while 3 makes one peerless. Finally, Teacher Peng told him that while he hadn't hit the special admission line just yet, his potential was undeniable. Because of this, they offered him a C-class letter of intent, securing his spot as a reserve candidate for the prestigious Keelin class. Teacher Peng further noted that institutions like Keelin, Black Dragon, and Tianfeng do not accept traditional applications. They operate on a contract-based admission system, actively seeking out geniuses themselves. Teacher Yu explained that if Chendo signed, he would immediately receive millions in resources, including Qi blood medicines, professional sparring partners from the martial arts hall, and mental tempering pills. Teacher Peng added that once admitted, he could fulfill the necessary requirements before officially becoming a martial artist. If he succeeded, his contract would automatically upgrade to B class, granting him a chance to enter the Keelin class directly whenever a slot opened. Without hesitation, Chendo asked if signing meant he could relocate his family to live with him. Teacher Yu immediately replied that this was not permitted. His family would have to stay in their current residence, as the regulations were very strict on this matter. Teacher Peng clarified that this was for everyone's safety, as only martial artists on special missions or soaring martial artists are allowed to travel freely between regions. Hearing this, Chendo's expression turned solemn. He politely apologized to Teacher Yu and Teacher Peng for taking up their time and informed them that he had already chosen a school. The 2 teachers were stunned, immediately asking if he meant Black Dragon or Tianfeng. Chendo replied that he had chosen Mount Huang Martial Arts University, one of the top 8 schools. Teacher Yu was incredulous, questioning why he would choose a lower-ranked institution. In his mind, losing a prospect to the other 2 top-tier universities was understandable, but losing to Mount Huang was completely unexpected. Chendo explained that his priority was staying near his family. Having witnessed the danger of monster invasions, he wanted to be there to protect them. Teacher Peng argued that out of 10 million applicants each year, the chance of entering the Keelin class was a mere 0.00014%. He pointed out that more than half of the strongest martial artists in their civilization came from the top 3 universities. He insisted that if Chendo truly wanted to protect his family, he needed to become as powerful as possible, as a genius holds far more influence than an ordinary person. Chendo offered a small smile, thanking them for recognizing his potential, but he firmly declined the contract. Realizing his mind was made up, Teacher Yu and Teacher Peng took their leave. Once they were gone, Chendo asked Teacher Ling Yun if he had any thoughts on the matter. Teacher Ling Yun replied that while listening to advice is helpful, there is nothing wrong with forging one's own path. He simply encouraged Chendo to do his best in the upcoming match. Privately, however, Teacher Ling Yun planned to speak with the principal to find a way to change Chendo's mind. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the Zhou family training grounds, where Zhou Xiaogu was in the middle of a rigorous session. Holding a spear, he swung with all his might, shouting as he poured every ounce of strength into each strike. Despite his raw power, his father effortlessly parried the attacks using only 2 fingers. His father told him that he had been enduring this beating for 3 hours and suggested they take a break. Frustrated, Zhou Xiaogu rolled onto the floor, declaring that one day he would finally defeat his father. His father approached and handed him a drink, telling him that before he worried about that, he should focus on winning the competition tomorrow. Zhou Xiaogu happily accepted the white peach-flavored drink, confidently stating that he still had several aces up his sleeve. He was certain the championship was coming home to High City. The following day, Chendo entered the High City First High School auditorium accompanied by teacher Ling Yun. As they walked through the hall, a sharp sensation washed over him, as if someone's gaze was fixed directly on him. Looking up toward the VIP section, he spotted their principal engaged in a deep conversation with another official. Principal Li was visibly stunned. He admitted to his colleague that he hadn't fully believed reports of Chendo's level 9 spirit perception until that very moment. To be noticed by a student from such a distance and through such a thick crowd was proof of an incredibly sharp sensory talent. To the principal, Chendo was proving to be truly exceptional. Teacher Ling Yun noticed the exchange and smiled at Chendo, noting that Principal Li was clearly keeping a close watch on him and had even made a special trip just to witness his performance. He gestured toward the balcony, explaining that the gallery was filled with various school principals. Before long, the competition announcer took the stage to congratulate the top 10 students who had successfully reached the finals. The atmosphere grew tense as the official rules for the final round were revealed. The finals would be split into two distinct phases. The first phase consisted of random 1v1 pairings to immediately determine the top 5 contenders. The second phase, however, was a grueling gauntlet match. The system would randomly select a single challenger from the top 5 who would then have to face the other 4 finalists in back-to-back matches. Every victory would earn the challenger 2 points, while a loss would result in a 1-point deduction. Once the first challenger finished their run, the participant with the highest remaining points would take their turn as the next challenger, and the cycle would repeat until all bouts were settled. In the event of a tie, the system would draw lots to decide the next move. Chendo processed the math quickly. The maximum score possible was 8 points, and a tie was almost mathematically impossible unless the very first challenger managed to sweep the entire field. He realized instantly that he needed to conserve as much stamina as possible during his opening match to survive the potential exhaustion of the gauntlet. Suddenly, the screen flickered to life to reveal the brackets. A shout erupted from the crowd as one spectator pointed out that Senior Ku would be Chendo's opponent. The official matchups were displayed as follows. Group 1. Chen Du of Liang City vs Ku Zongtian of High City. Group 2. Valo of High City vs Zhang Dao of Zhou City. Group 3. Wang Ming of Li City vs Song Qilan of Mu City. Group 4. Yi Shuzhou of Song City vs Hua Cab of Yan City. Group 5. Zhou Xiaogu of High City vs Li Ran of Gui City. Whispers immediately began to circulate through the stands. Some students mocked Chendo, claiming he had only hidden behind technicalities to reach the top 10 because he was terrified of Zhou Xiaogu. They predicted that Ku Zongtian would easily crush him. Chendo remained silent, focused on the bigger picture. If the High City team had designed a strategy to monopolize the championship, burning through his energy in the first round would be a fatal mistake. Meanwhile, other students noted that while Balo was favored in his match and Zhou Xiaogu's victory was a foregone conclusion, the real stakes lay with Ku Zongtian. If he could eliminate Chendo, High City would sweep the top 3 spots, marking a perfect 10th consecutive championship for them. Watching from the sidelines, Teacher Yu questioned if the finals were even worth watching anymore. Teacher Peng, however, held a card loaded with 1 million in resources. He remarked that if Chendo lost, he would offer the sum as a personal investment. He believed that someone as family-oriented as Chendo wouldn't lose his way, and while the boy had immense talent, he was clearly hampered by a lack of funds. Despite the odds, Peng still held high expectations for him. As Chendo sized up Ku Zongtian, he couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty. Ku's opponents from the previous day had been so underwhelming that they practically surrendered, falling to a single strike. This left Chendo with no real data on the man's true power level or the specific fundamentals of his style. Deciding that caution was his best ally, Chendo resolved to observe and wait for an opening rather than rushing in blindly. Ku Zongtian drew his blade with a confident smirk, telling Chendo he had been anticipating the moment their paths would finally cross. In a flash, Ku lunged forward, closing the distance with startling speed. Chendo's eyes widened as he recognized the technique immediately. It was the flowing light sword art. Ku admitted he had been equally surprised to see Chendo using the same style the day before. He proposed that since they shared the same discipline, they should settle who the superior practitioner was through a contest of raw strength and output. Chendo parried the opening blow, but as their blades locked and clashed in rapid succession, he felt the weight of Ku's strikes increasing. It was clear that Ku was holding nothing back, pouring his entire being into every swing from the very start. A cry erupted from the audience as the stadium screens updated, showing Ku Zongtian's martial arts index hitting a staggering 99%. It was a perfect mirror of Chendo's own rating. Ku let out a roar, unleashing a devastating slash while shouting that their battle was far from over. Chendo braced himself and blocked the strike with all his might, though a flicker of irritation crossed his mind. He marveled at how his opponent had reached the absolute peak of the art, wondering if Ku had also achieved mastery through analogy. He leapt backward to evade another heavy follow-up, clearing his mind to focus on the sensation of the fight. He realized he didn't feel a unique aura from Ku, instead, it was a pure application of spirit power attachment. On the overhead display, Chendo's martial arts index ticked up to 99.2% as he danced around Ku's offensive. His mind raced. To claim the championship, he would have to defeat 5 people in total. To survive the rounds ahead, he couldn't afford a long, drawn-out duel, he needed to end this immediately to preserve his stamina. Noticing the shift in Chendo's stance, Ku Zongtian smiled, welcoming the change in pace. Chendo met his gaze with cold intensity, declaring that he would end the match in a single heartbeat. Ku scoffed, daring Chendo to show him exactly what he meant by that. Chendo surged forward, initiating the flowing light sword art's 4th form, Assured Dragon Fierce. Ku sneered at the move, believing it lacked the lethality to win a head-on collision. But just as he prepared to counter, Chendo's flow shifted seamlessly into the 2nd form, Golden Shock reaching the heaven. Ku's heart sank as he realized Chendo was capable of switching techniques mid-motion without losing an ounce of momentum, a feat only a true master could achieve. But Chendo wasn't finished. As he closed the final gap, he transitioned once more into the 3rd form, Clear Forest Breeze. In that fraction of a second, he whispered a final goodbye. A massive horizontal slash followed, carving a trail of dark blue energy through the air that slammed directly into Ku Zongtian. Reeling from the impact, Ku stood in shock, unable to process how he had been dismantled so completely. Chendo stood tall, a cold, dark blue aura beginning to envelop his frame. High above, the system screen flashed with the final confirmation: Chendo's martial arts index had officially reached the Tier 1 limit of 100%. After the battle ended, Chendo finally let out a relieved breath. Moments later, the screen once again displayed his martial skill index at a perfect 100%. Several students were immediately stunned. They could hardly believe that someone had truly reached the 100% limit. According to them, this was the first time they had ever witnessed a person capable of such a feat. The audience suddenly erupted into chaos and loud shouting. In their eyes, Chendo had clearly been hiding his true strength the entire time. Many believed that the results of the 100-city hegemony tournament were now bound to change completely. Others quickly agreed and admitted that they had never expected the dark horse Chendo to be this terrifying. When Chendo heard their reactions, a faint smile appeared on his face. However, he suddenly turned around when Ku Zongtian called out to him. Ku Zongtian was still breathing heavily while wondering whether Chendo had truly reached the Tier 1 limit. He admitted that he had not sensed even the slightest trace of limit intent from the sublimation of Chendo's sword stance. Chendo paid no attention to the question and simply said that he was leaving, walking away and leaving Ku Zongtian standing there in complete shock. Not long afterward, the screen officially displayed the result announcing Liang City team member Chen Du as the winner. As he walked away, Chendo realized that Ku Zongtian had merely been trying to gather information from him in order to help his teammates prepare. In Chendo's opinion, Ku Zongtian could continue dreaming if he thought that would work. Meanwhile, Chen Du's principal could hardly believe what had just happened. Only a single day had passed, yet Chen Du's martial arts mastery had once again risen by another 1%, climbing from 99% all the way to 100%. Not only that, but there was even the extremely difficult 0.1% barrier between those stages. He repeatedly questioned himself about how something like that was even possible. Teacher Yu was equally unable to process what he had witnessed. Before he could finish speaking, Teacher Peng suddenly interrupted him. Teacher Peng explained that the situation was incredibly difficult to explain, but while it might not be impossible, the probability of such a thing happening was unbelievably small. There was only one explanation he could think of. Chen Du had likely become a martial soul. Their conversation abruptly stopped when a voice suddenly spoke from behind them. The newcomer called out their names and asked why they had not informed him that they were coming to watch the matches. When they turned around, they saw Zhou Xiaogu's father. Zhou Xiaogu's father spoke again and remarked that if nobody had informed him earlier that morning, he would never have known that the two of them were actually in High City. He handed Teacher Yu a drink, which Teacher Yu happily accepted while greeting Zhou Xiaogu's father. Teacher Yu casually mentioned that Zhou Xiaogu had probably already received a B-class letter of intent from Black Dragon Martial Arts University. Principal Shu smiled and replied that his son only possessed a small amount of potential to become a soaring martial artist. However, he added that the young man Chen Du was also exceptionally talented. According to him, Chen Du's upcoming battles were definitely going to become extremely interesting. As the next matches continued, the audience remained in complete disbelief. Nobody expected that after Senior Ku Zongtian's defeat, even Senior Walluo would end up losing as well. One person commented that nobody could have predicted someone would achieve a breakthrough right in the middle of battle. Another added that Senior Zhou Xiaogu was now the only one left. They wondered whether the High City team might actually lose. At that moment, Zhou Xiaogu stepped onto the stage while carrying his weapon. He calmly faced his opponent, who held a massive shield in his hands. Because of this, the students from High City immediately erupted into loud cheers, shouting Zhou Xiaogu's name while declaring that he would remain at the top forever. Meanwhile, Zhou Xiaogu's opponent felt extremely nervous while thinking about how the Lu Men shield technique possessed almost no blind spots in its defense. He was certain that he could endure the fight until Zhou Xiaogu eventually revealed an opening. However, in a sudden movement, Zhou Xiaogu unleashed an incredibly violent and overwhelmingly powerful strike. The sound of his attack echoed throughout the entire arena. After a brief moment, Zhou Xiaogu slightly turned his head while his opponent let out a deep breath of shock. At the same time, the screen displayed the result announcing High City team member Zhou Xiaogu as the winner. With only a single strike, he had shattered his opponent's incredibly powerful defense and instantly ended the match. The audience erupted in excitement because of Zhou Xiaogu's overwhelming strength. He had finished the battle in only 1 second. Although Chen Du had already shown terrifying power earlier, the spectators still believed that Senior Zhou Xiaogu would completely crush him without difficulty. Because of this, the worries of those who feared Zhou Xiaogu might lose immediately disappeared. In their opinion, there had never been any reason to doubt him in the first place. Meanwhile, Chen Du silently observed the completed battle while thinking that after the first round, they would immediately proceed into the second round of the rotation battle. He wondered who the system would choose first. When Zhou Xiaogu's name appeared on the screen, several students immediately commented that it looked like the champion was about to be crowned already. They excitedly declared that they could not wait to watch Senior Zhou Xiaogu crush all 4 of his future opponents one after another. As Zhou Xiaogu stood proudly in the middle of the stage, he smiled and announced that the first participant he wished to challenge was Chen Du from Liang City team. The moment Chen Du heard those words, a smile instantly appeared on his face. Just as he expected, Zhou Xiaogu was truly powerful and overflowing with confidence. And that was exactly what Chen Du wanted. Not long afterward, Chen Du stepped onto the stage as well. The two of them stared directly at each other with intense determination in their eyes. While Zhou Xiaogu seriously focused his gaze on Chen Du, the screen suddenly displayed that his martial skill index had already reached 100%. Immediately afterward, he moved at incredible speed and leapt high into the air above Chen Du. The audience could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Zhou Xiaogu had completely unleashed his martial arts power from the very beginning. In their eyes, it seemed as though he intended to finish Chen Du instantly at the start of the battle. However, Chen Du showed no signs of concern. He calmly prepared himself while wondering if this was what people called limit intent. The fusion of intention and power that nearly surpassed normal understanding was truly extraordinary. Without hesitation, Zhou Xiaogu unleashed the Holy King Stop technique, 4th stance, drowning 1,000 miles. Chen Du directly met the attack using his weapon and successfully pushed back Zhou Xiaogu's massive wave-like assault. At the same moment, the screen displayed that Chen Du's martial skill index had also reached 100%. As Zhou Xiaogu observed the result of his attack, he quietly fell into thought. Since Chen Du had managed to repel his power, it was obvious that Chen Du was finally becoming serious. Because of this, Zhou Xiaogu prepared himself once more while remarking that, just as expected, Chen Du truly possessed genuine ability. Chen Du also prepared himself again and released an overwhelming presence that instantly shocked the audience. Everyone stared in disbelief while wondering if their eyes were deceiving them. A deep blue energy had completely enveloped Chen Du's body. Some people even thought they were simply hallucinating. When teacher Ling Yun saw this, he could no longer hide his excitement as he declared that Chendo had truly accomplished it. Meanwhile, Teacher Yu suddenly turned pale as he muttered that he had not been mistaken back then after all. Chendu's spiritual power had already reached level 10, and his soul had advanced to the level of a martial soul.
Ito na po nagtatapos ang ating kabanata, abangan ang mga susunod pa nating upload. Huwag din kakalimutang mag-like, share, subscribe at i-click ang notification bell para lagi kayong updated sa mga susunod pa nating mga video.